Chapter 747. Hearing Duanmu Huang's words, Xing Jian and Luo were stunned. The two of them never thought that Duanmu Huang's plan and orders would be like this. Xing Jian frowned. His eyes glinted as he thought to himself, the patriarch's vicious plan is too vicious. Once Luo's plan succeeds, Cloud Soul Palace will fall into chaos and Divine Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet will be ruined. Ji Tianqing would definitely become Cloud Spirit Palace's mortal enemy. He would completely break off all ties with Cloud Spirit Palace and become their enemy. At that time, Yun Zhongqi will be filled with anger and kill him with a single palm, right? Luo was silent for a moment and said in a low voice, Master, although this plan is vicious, it will be very difficult to succeed. Duanmu Huang nodded and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said, That's right, it will be very difficult. However, you have always been highly regarded by the Yun family and Bailey Ningsu. You know Bailey Ningsu the best and the chances of success are very high. The difficult part is that Bailey Ningsu also knows you well and her strength is not bad. I'm afraid it will be very easy for her to recognize your aura and see through your disguise. However, since I asked you to carry out this plan, how could I not have made preparations? As he spoke, Duanmu Huang took out a mysterious sandalwood box from his interspatial ring. There are 3 things in this box. Other than a magic dagger, there is also a pill and a mask. They are all secret treasures I obtained from the Murong family. The pill can conceal your aura and help you fake Ji Tianqing's aura. The mask is also a magic tool that can make you look like Ji Tianqing. No one under the spirit refining realm will be able to see through your disguise. As for the dagger, it is incomparably sharp and indestructible. Moreover, it has been dipped in poison. As he spoke, Duanmu Huang handed the sandalwood box to Luo. Luo received the sandalwood box with both hands and solemnly put it away. He quickly bowed and said, Since Master has considered everything so thoroughly, this subordinate will not disappoint you. Master, please wait for this subordinate's good news. After he finished speaking, Luo bowed and left the secret room. After Luo left, Duanmu Huang revealed a sinister smile and muttered to himself, Hee, there will be a good show to watch very soon. Ji Tianqing, Ji Tianqing, I really want to see how you will feel when Yun Zhongqi, who you rely on, kills you with his own hands. How would you feel when the person you love turns against you and wants to kill you to avenge her mother? Ha ha ha. Duanmu Huang laughed coldly, his tone filled with coldness and venom, making one's hair stand on end. Cloud Soul Palace was peaceful as usual. For the next 2 days, Ji Tianqing cultivated in Hefeng Garden. His strength was steadily increasing, and his white heart devil subduing art had also reached the small success stage. During this period, Qianyu went out to play every day. She got along well with the maids in Cloud Soul Palace and became familiar with them. Yunyao visited Ji Tianqing every day and chatted with him about some interesting things in the palace. Divine Dr. Bailey also sent someone to the Wind Garden to give Ji Tianqing a bottle of Spirit Dawn that could help him cultivate and improve his power. Ji Tianqing asked Yunyao and found out that she had asked Miracle Dr. Bailey to give him the elixir, which was very beneficial to his cultivation. Other than that, no one else came to disturb Ji Tianqing. Zhu Fifan also tactfully avoided it, and never appeared again. 2 days passed quickly. Miracle Dr. Bailey's 300th birthday was in 2 days' time. In these few days, everyone in the Yun family was busy preparing for the birthday banquet. Cloud Soul Palace was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Some guests had already arrived in advance. Tomorrow, more guests would come to the banquet and Cloud Soul Palace would be more lively. When night fell, in Thousand Cloud Palace, Bailey Ningsu was sitting at the table in her room, holding a cup of spirit tea and silently sipping it. She frowned and thought about something. Her personal maid, Yun Luo, stood quietly to the side, not making the slightest sound to avoid disturbing her thoughts. The matter between Yao Yao and Ji Tianqing is now known by everyone in Cloud Soul Palace. Many people have a good impression of Ji Tianqing. Many of the younger generation even respect and worship Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, this brat, not only is he talented in martial arts, but he also has a mysterious background. He is also infatuated with Yao Yao and would rather sacrifice his life to save Yao Yao. These thoughts flashed through Bailey Ningsu's mind and her heart was slightly warm. She thought to herself, Ji Tianqing is growing so fast that he can be a good match for Yao Yao. Moreover, he is so attentive to Yao Yao, which makes me, as his mother, feel relieved. A woman, even if she is a noble, must marry a man who is devoted to her in order to obtain happiness. Since it is like this, why don't I use this opportunity to probe Ji Tianqing and see if he has any plans to get married? If the conditions are right, I will let him and Yao Yao get married as soon as possible and settle the matter between me and Patriarch. Bailey Ningsu thought for a while and finally made up her mind. She ordered Yun Luo beside her, Yun Luo, go to Hefeng Garden and ask Ji Tianqing to come see me. Tell him that I want to see him alone and discuss something important with him. Yun Luo nodded and quickly cupped her hands, this servant obeys. After speaking, Yun Luo turned and left. After she left Thousand Cloud Palace, she went straight to Hefeng Garden. Outside the palace, the curtain of night was already dark. Inside Cloud Soul Palace, the lanterns were lit and everywhere was brightly lit. Yun Luo left Thousand Cloud Palace and rushed to Hefeng Garden while frowning. In 2 days, Divine Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet will be held. I don't have much time left. I have waited for a few days and haven't found a suitable opportunity. If I don't act now, I won't be able to complete Master's orders. Bailey Ningsu wants to see Ji Tianqing alone. This is a good opportunity. Why don't I take this opportunity? Thinking of this, Yun Luo made up her mind. Seeing that there was no one around, she rushed to the left side of the road behind a jade statue. Not long after, when she came out from behind the statue and returned to the Bluestone Road, she had already changed her appearance. Previously, she was wearing the Yun family's servant's embroidered dress. Now, she had changed into a luxurious white robe and combed her hair into a bun, becoming a man. Moreover, her body shape had also changed. She had become a tall and handsome young man in high spirits. Especially her appearance, she had also changed into a handsome and extraordinary man's face. Her figure, appearance, and aura were all the same as Ji Tianqing's. Yun Luo did not dare to delay any longer. She quickly turned and left, following the main road back to Thousand Cloud Palace. After she left, not far from the roadside forest, an ice-blue figure appeared. Chapter 748. Xian Yu held a jar of wine in its paws and was about to rush back to Hefeng Garden to invite Ji Tianqing to taste the wine. However, it saw a strange scene just now. It clearly saw a tall and thin servant girl walk up to the statue by the roadside. In the blink of an eye, a young man walked out from behind the statue. Moreover, the back and appearance of the young man in white robes vaguely resembled Ji Tianqing. Xian Yu was stunned. It shook its head vigorously and muttered to itself, "Eh?" It was clearly a woman. How did she turn into a man in the blink of an eye? And he looks like old Ji. Could it be that I drank too much and my eyes were playing tricks on me? Xian Yu was full of doubts. It quickly flew behind the jade statue and looked around. The result was obvious. There was no one behind the statue. There was not even a shadow. That's not right. This is too strange. There must be a problem. No, I have to hurry back and find old Ji. Xian Yu immediately sobered up. It realized that something was wrong and quickly turned around to return to Hefeng Garden. Swoosh! Xian Yu hugged the wine jar and flew back to Hefeng Garden. As soon as it entered the courtyard, it did not have time to put down the wine jar. It rushed to Ji Tianqing's door. Old G. Old G, are you there? Qian Yu shouted through the door, its voice filled with anxiety. In the dimly lit room, Ji Tianqing's voice immediately sounded. Qian Yu, what happened? Following his voice, the door opened with a creak. Qian Yu rushed into the room and saw Ji Tianqing sitting on the bed, looking at it suspiciously. Seeing Ji Tianqing's posture, it was obvious that he had been meditating in the room. Seeing this, Qian Yu was even more certain that something was wrong. It quickly said to Ji Tianqing, Old Ji, on my way back, I saw something strange. A servant girl went behind a statue by the roadside and turned into a man in the blink of an eye. He looked exactly like you. Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned and showed a puzzled expression. Qian Yu, are you drunk? What nonsense are you talking about? Qian Yu looked down at the wine jar and quickly placed it on the table. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a serious face and said in a serious tone, Old Ji, I'm not drunk. I saw it with my own eyes. Ji Tianqing saw that it was clear-headed and didn't seem to be lying, so he said seriously, then tell me slowly, what happened? It's like this, when I came back just now. Qian Yu hurriedly told the story in full detail, not concealing or omitting anything. After listening to its words, Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, and his face became somewhat gloomy. You're saying that you personally saw a maid taking on my appearance and rushing toward the Thousand Cloud Palace? Yeah. Qian Yu quickly nodded and said in a low voice, Old Ji, I think this matter is very strange, I'm afraid there's some conspiracy. The Thousand Cloud Palace is Yunyao's mother's palace. Why don't we quickly go and take a look? We don't want to cause any misunderstandings. Ji Tianqing also had the same idea and immediately got out of bed. Let's go, we'll go quickly. I want to see who's playing tricks and what kind of tricks they're trying to play. As he spoke, he led Qian Yu out the door. Inside the Thousand Cloud Palace, the lights were bright and the atmosphere was peaceful and solemn. Dressed in a white robe and disguised as Ji Tianqing, Yun Luo calmly walked through the corridor and stairs towards Bailey Ningxu's room. Along the way, when the servants and guards saw her, they all showed a respectful expression and respectfully saluted her, calling her young Master Ji. Yun Luo didn't pay attention to these servants and guards at all. Along the way, she was silent and calm. A moment later, she arrived outside Bailey Ningxu's room and said in a low voice, Junior Ji Tianqing greets Madame Yun. Inside the luxurious and elegant room, Bailey Ningxu was sitting by the table in deep thought. Hearing Ji Tianqing's voice, she immediately recovered and said in a gentle voice, Come in. The door opened and Yun Luo walked in, standing in front of Bailey Ningxu. Tianqing greets Auntie. What instructions does Auntie have for summoning me in the middle of the night? Yun Luo's voice and tone were exactly the same as Ji Tianqing's. Her posture was also neither servile nor overbearing, revealing a trace of confidence and pride. Bailey Ningxu looked at him with a gentle gaze and reached out a slender hand, indicating for him to sit down and talk. Tianqing, you don't need to be so nervous. Auntie summoned you here to discuss a matter with you alone. Bailey Ningxu's expression and tone were very gentle. There was even a faint smile on her face. At this moment, she had accepted Ji Tianqing from her heart. Her entire body was emitting the radiance of a mother, as well as the benevolence and bearing of an elder. What does Auntie want to discuss with me? Yun Luo pretended to sit down next to Bailey Ningxu as she spoke. Without a sound, she was already within 5 steps of Bailey Ningxu. This distance was the best for a Sky Origin stage expert to attack. One strike was sure to hit, and there was no way to dodge. However, Bailey Ningxu wasn't prepared at all. She didn't know that this Ji Tianqing in front of her had already begun to emit a murderous intent. She lowered her head and held the teacup, gently sipping a mouthful of spirit tea. She was thinking of how to tactfully test Ji Tianqing's attitude. While she was deep in thought, Yun Luo's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. She secretly shouted in her heart, now. At the same time, Yun Luo suddenly stretched out her right hand that was hidden in her sleeve. Holding a coldly flickering dagger, she ruthlessly stabbed it towards Bailey Ningsu's chest. The two of them were only 5 steps apart. She could reach Bailey Ningsu with just a stretch of her hand. Her speed was very fast. Moreover, it was an assassination that had been accumulating energy for a long time. It could be said that she was determined to succeed. The coldly flickering dagger was suffused with a blue light. It was obviously dipped in poison. Moreover, this dagger was prepared by Duanmu Huang for Yun Luo. It had already reached the level of a magic tool. There was nothing it couldn't pierce. Bailey Ningsu had just sensed that something was wrong. Before she could react, she only felt a blur in front of her eyes and a cold stab of pain came from her chest. Clang! The chopstick-length dagger ruthlessly stabbed towards Bailey Ningsu's left chest. However, it was blocked by something, letting out a metallic sound. Yun Luo immediately sensed that something was wrong. She stared at Bailey Ningsu's wound and saw that she was actually wearing a tight-fitting soft armor. That dark golden soft armor was also a magic tool. Its defensive power was very strong. Although the dagger tore through the soft armor and successfully stabbed into Bailey Ningsu's chest. However, the position of the wound was a bit off. The dagger didn't pierce through her heart. Chapter 749. Bailey Ningsu's face turned as white as snow, her eyes wide open. She looked at the dagger in her chest, then slowly raised her head to look at Yun Luo, revealing an expression of disbelief. She simply couldn't believe it, and coldly asked, Ji Tianxing, you, why? Yun Luo used her right hand to pull the dagger out. The dagger immediately brought out a stream of hot blood, spraying onto the table. She looked at Bailey Ningsu with a cold smile, and coldly shouted, why should I kill you? Don't you understand? Yao Yao and I are truly in love, but you're obstructing us in every way possible. As long as I kill you, no one will be able to stop me from being together with Yao Yao. Hearing Yun Luo's words, Bailey Ningsu's body trembled, and she suddenly revealed a bitter cold smile. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianxing. I only recently accepted you, and wanted to discuss the matter between you and Yao Yao. I didn't expect that you're so dignified and refined on the surface, but your heart is actually so vicious and ruthless. I must have been blind to actually believe you. Bailey Ningsu angrily shouted, and immediately raised her right hand, exploding with all her strength, and fiercely slapped towards Yun Luo. Although Bailey Ningsu was stabbed by the dagger, poisoned, and had a black line on her neck, she was still the Yun Luo clan's master. She was still the Yun clan's matriarch, a Sky Origin Stage 7th layer expert. Filled with grief and anger, she hatefully sent out a palm strike, containing a valiant power, releasing a dazzling light. However, Yun Luo was already prepared, and immediately raised her arms in front of her, blocking Bailey Ningsu's palm strike. Bang! Yun Luo was hit by the 5-colored palm, and was sent flying, fiercely slamming into the wall. Bang! With a muffled sound, Yun Luo crashed into the wall, creating a human-shaped hole, and fell into the next room. The entire wall was torn apart and immediately collapsed, turning into rubble that came crashing down. Yun Luo rolled on the ground twice, and then jumped up to his feet. Her strength was not much weaker than Bailey Ningsu's, and she was already prepared, even wearing a tight armor. The power of Bailey Ningsu's palm was completely neutralized by her, and she was not injured in the slightest. Bailey Ningsu, prepare to die. Yun Luo's killing intent soared as he charged at Bailey Ningsu like a bolt of lightning, stabbing his dagger towards her throat. The poison in Bailey Ningsu's body had already flared up, and the true essence in her body was blocked. She actually couldn't use much strength. When she saw Ji Tianxing charging towards her, she could only retreat and take out a white silk Dharma artifact from her interspatial ring to block the attack. Chaotic dance of heavenly stars. Bailey Ningsu shouted in a low voice. Her left hand covered the bleeding wound while her right hand waved the white silk magic tool, scattering specks of light towards Yun Luo. Pang pang pang. Yun Luo desperately brandished his dagger, stabbing out dozens of cold lights, shattering Bailey Ningsu's attack. The violent energy exploded, immediately turning the luxurious and elegant room into a mess. Both the ground and the walls were cracked, and dense cracks appeared on their surface. The tables, chairs, and furniture in the room were all blown to pieces, splashing everywhere and creating muffled pang 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 sounds when they hit the walls. Yun Luo took this opportunity to pass through the scattered starlight, instantly arriving in front of Bailey Ningsu and stabbing his dagger towards her throat. Bailey Ningsu didn't have time to dodge and could only lean backwards to avoid this fatal blow. Rip! The dagger glowing with blue light tore through her robe and soft armor on her right shoulder, leaving behind a chopstick-sized wound. The wound was so deep that bone could be seen, and blood immediately spurted out. Bailey Ningsu was sent flying by the powerful impact, crashing into a wall and tumbling into the living room outside the room. Her injuries were even more disastrous, and the poison in her body was difficult to suppress, fiercely erupting. She could no longer muster any strength, and her entire body became limp and powerless. Black lines appeared on her snow-white cheeks. Bailey Ningsu still had the graceful posture of a mother, but now her hair was disheveled, her body was covered in blood, and her appearance was extremely miserable. The phoenix-tailed jade crown on her head and the golden buyao in her hair all fell to the ground and shattered into pieces. Without waiting for her to crawl up from the ground, Yun Luo rushed over again. Die! Yun Luo coldly shouted with a murderous aura. He fiercely waved his dagger, fiercely stabbing it towards Bailey Ningsu's forehead. Seeing that Bailey Ningsu's strength was scattered, she was unable to block the attack and was about to lose her life. At this critical moment, the door was smashed into smithereens with a bang. Two tall and sturdy figures rushed in like ferocious tigers. These two people were wearing silver armor and holding standard swords. They were clearly the guards of the Thousand Cloud Palace. Besides, they were both leaders of the guards who were at the third level of the Sky Origin stage. Bold thief, hand over your life. You dare to assassinate the mistress, you're courting death. When the two guard commanders saw the situation in the room, they were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets as they shouted. The two of them rushed to Bailey Ningsu's side with the fastest speed in their lives. Without hesitation, they stood in front of Bailey Ningsu, using their flesh and blood to block Yun Luo's attack. Puchi! The cold glint of the dagger instantly pierced through the throat of one of the guard commanders. A bloody hole appeared in the guard commander's throat as he spat out a mouthful of hot blood. His eyes widened on the spot as he stopped breathing and fell to the ground. The other guard commander was furious. He used all of his strength to brandish his sword, fiercely stabbing it towards Yun Luo. Yun Luo's attack was blocked. He immediately jumped back and brandished his dagger to fight with the guard commander. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Bailey Ningsu hurriedly crawled up from the ground and retreated to the door. After exchanging 3 moves with the guard commander, Yun Luo heavily injured the guard commander and chopped off one of his arms. However, the sound of the battle had already alarmed the entire Thousand Cloud Palace. Countless dazzling flames lit up the palace. More than a dozen silver-armored guards were rushing over as fast as lightning. Even those loyal maids and maids hurriedly shouted for help and quickly came to rescue the mistress. Bang bang bang. Following a series of muffled footsteps, a noble young master dressed in luxurious clothes arrived with a few guards. The person was Zhu Fifan. As soon as he rushed into the room, he saw that the room was in a mess. There was also a guard commander's corpse lying on the ground. His concubine's clothes were stained with blood and her injuries were quite serious. She looked very miserable. And the person who assassinated Bailey Ningsu was actually Ji Tianqing. Zhu Fifan suddenly glared at him and shouted with shock and anger, "Ji Tianqing! It's actually you! You vicious bastard, you dare to assassinate the mistress?" Seeing Zhu Fifan rushing into the room with the guards, Yun Luo was immediately filled with anger and showed a strong resentment in her eyes. Although her heart was full of unwillingness, she had to accept the reality. Chapter 750. Yun Luo hated that she couldn't kill Bailey Ningsu quickly. Instead, she alarmed the guards of the Thousand Cloud Palace. By now, more and more guards and maids were rushing over. It was impossible for her to continue to assassinate Bailey Ningsu. If she continued to stay, when the experts of the Yun family arrived, her identity would be exposed. Thinking of this, she suppressed the anger and killing intent in her heart and turned around to escape without hesitation. Bang! Yun Luo turned into a ball of golden light, crashed through the side window and escaped from Bailey Ningsu's room. In the blink of an eye, she escaped from the Thousand Cloud Palace and into the dark night, fleeing far away. Ji Tianqing! You bastard, don't think you can escape. In the room, Zhu Fifan cursed furiously. He subconsciously rushed forward and wanted to lead the guards to chase Ji Tianqing. However, he was only in the Yuan Dan stage and couldn't fly. When he saw Bailey Ningsu's serious injuries, he immediately stopped and asked with concern, "Aunt, how are your injuries? Are you alright?" Bailey Ningsu had already taken out a spirit pill and temporarily blocked the poison in her body with the help of the pill. She inherited most of the medical skills of divine Dr. Bailey and was also a medical master. For a short time, she could still resist the poison in her body and her life would not be in danger. Bailey Ningsu sat on the chair with a pale face, waved her hand and said in a weak voice, "Don't worry about me, I can still hold on. Take some men and chase after him immediately. You must capture Ji Tianqing." "Yes." Zhu Fifan no longer hesitated and quickly cupped his fist to accept the order and left the room with a group of guards. Everyone rushed out of the Thousand Cloud Palace and saw Yun Luo's figure disappear in the night sky. "Chase!" Zhu Fifan waved his hand and gave the order, leading the 9 guards to chase with all their strength. Swish swish swish. Everyone's speed was extremely fast, like lightning cutting through the night sky, quickly passing through 2 palaces and a house. However, when everyone chased to a straight bluestone road, they completely lost track of Yun Luo and could no longer catch up. The 9 guards had to stop and frowned at Zhu Fifan, waiting for him to make a decision. Zhu Fifan panted and looked around sharply, looking for traces of Yun Luo. Damn Ji Tianqing, he escaped. However, his evil deeds have been exposed, he can't escape from Cloud Spirit Palace. Zhu Fifan could not understand why Ji Tianqing was so reckless and impulsive to assassinate Bailey Ningsu. Yun Luo, this was obviously a good thing for him. At the very least, after this incident, Ji Tianqing would be Cloud Soul Palace's enemy. It would be impossible for him to obtain Miracle Dr. Bailey's medical skills. Ji Tianqing, that idiot, is as stupid as a pig. He is die, he is die. He's, Yun suddenly at this moment, he suddenly saw 2 figures appear on the bluestone road in front of him. It was a young man in a white robe and an ice blue fox, who were rushing towards them. When Zhu Fifan saw the appearance of the white-robed young man, his face was suddenly full of astonishment, and his eyes were full of doubts. Ji Tianqing? He actually escaped back here? In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing and Qianyu rushed to the front of the crowd and were about to pass by them. Zhu Fifan frowned and had some doubts in his mind. This guy is with a pet. It seems that he is going to the Thousand Cloud Palace. Shouldn't he be running for his life? What is he trying to do? Zhu Fifan vaguely felt that something was wrong. But he did not want to think too much. He waved his hand and ordered without hesitation, "Catch him. Don't let him escape." The 9 guards didn't think too much about it. They just obeyed orders and orders. They immediately drew their swords and sabers and surrounded Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu in a flash. Swish! 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 9 gleaming swords were pointed at Ji Tianqing's neck, chest, and other vital parts. Ji Tianqing was forced to stop in his tracks. He furrowed his brows in confusion. He looked at Zhu Fifan sharply and asked in a deep voice, "Zhu Fifan, what are you trying to do?" Zhu Fifan sneered and said contemptuously, "What am I trying to do? Ji Tianqing, don't play dumb with me. You have committed such a heinous crime. You deserve to die." A hint of astonishment flashed in Ji Tianqing's eyes as he subconsciously asked, "What heinous crime?" "Zhu Fifan, don't slander me." Qian Yu did not speak, but she was annoyed and murmured in her heart, "It's over. I knew something big was going to happen." Sure enough, Zhu Fifan looked at Ji Tianqing contemptuously and said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, you are about to die and you are still pretending? Just now, you broke into the Qianyun Palace and tried to assassinate my aunt. You almost killed her. To think that our Cloud Spirit Palace has treated you so well. You are a beast with a human face. How dare you do such a cruel and vicious thing?" Upon hearing these words, Ji Tianqing's body trembled and his pupils constricted. What? Someone tried to assassinate Madame Yun? It was definitely not me. Someone pretended to be me and tried to assassinate her. Although Ji Tianqing tried his best to explain, Zhu Fifan did not believe him. Ha ha ha. Ji Tianqing, you really won't give up until you see the coffin. You can play dumb. I don't want to talk nonsense with you. After saying that, Zhu Fifan ordered the 9 guards, "What are you waiting for? Catch him." 2 of the guards immediately took out cold iron chains made of 1,000-years-old cold iron, wanting to tie Ji Tianqing up. Ji Tianqing waved his hands and slapped the 2 guards away. Zhu Fifan suddenly shouted angrily, "Ji Tianqing! How dare you hurt people? Since you are so stubborn, I will inform the punishment hall and ask them to take you to the ice prison." Ji Tianqing was stunned. He suddenly realized that it was not the time to quarrel and resist. If he continued to quarrel, it would only make things worse and more chaotic. So, he suppressed the anger in his heart and calmed down. He said in a low voice, "Zhu Fifan, I want to see Madame Yun. I didn't do this. As long as I confront her, the truth will be revealed." Seeing that he stopped resisting, Zhu Fifan sneered, "Good. Since you still refuse to admit your guilt, I will take you to the Qianyun Palace to confront her. Let's see how you will quibble." After saying that, he ordered the guards to escort Ji Tianqing and rushed towards the 1,000-cloud palace as fast as the wind. After a quarter of an hour, everyone arrived at the Qianyun Palace. They quickly went upstairs and entered Bailey Ningsu's room. At this time, Bailey Ningsu's room was full of people. More than 30 elite guards were guarding outside the room. They were full of killing intent. Chapter 751. The atmosphere in the room was cold, solemn, and somewhat oppressive. Bailey Ningsu was sitting on a rattan chair, silently circulating her energy to dissolve the poison in her body. 2 Yun family elders were working together to help her resist the corrosion of the poison. Everyone's expression was full of anger, and their eyes were full of killing intent. "Aunt, I've already caught Ji Tianqing," Zhu Fifan shouted in a low voice, and brought Ji Tianqing into the room. When Ji Tianqing stepped into the room, everyone turned their heads to look at him in unison. Their eyes were filled with intense hostility and killing intent. As soon as Ji Tianqing entered the room, he quickly saw the situation inside. Several walls collapsed, the windows were broken, and many of the furnishings were shattered. Bailey Ningsu was covered in blood, and she looked a bit embarrassed. The scene was a mess, and there was no doubt that a fierce battle had just happened here. Ji Tianqing's mood was a bit gloomy, and he secretly clenched his fists. But he kept calm, and walked in front of Bailey Ningsu, and cupped his hands in salute. Junior greets aunt. Bailey Ningsu temporarily stopped circulating her energy, and slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Ji Tianqing indifferently, and a trace of hatred flashed in her eyes. She said in a cold voice, "You don't have the qualifications to call me aunt. I really believed in you, and that's why I was killed by you." Ji Tianqing shook his head and hurriedly explained, "Auntie, please believe me. I didn't do it. Before today, I've been cultivating in Hefeng Garden, and I haven't even stepped out of the door. Just now, Qian Yu saw someone pretending to be me, and rushed to Thousand Cloud Palace, and quickly reported the news to me. When I heard the news, I hurriedly rushed over with Qian Yu, but I didn't expect that I would still be a step too late." Bailey Ningsu looked at him coldly, and didn't move at all. Twisting words and forcing logic. Zhu Fifan coldly snorted, and contemptuously sneered, "Ji Tianqing, in order to shirk responsibility, you even made up such a lie, you're really shameless." Ji Tianqing looked at him sharply, and said in a deep voice, "I'm not lying, this is what Qian Yu saw with his own eyes, he can testify." Qian Yu quickly nodded, and said in a serious tone, "Yes, just half an hour ago, I saw a maid pretending to be old Ji." "Ha ha ha." Zhu Fifan suddenly laughed, and looked at Ji, and asked, "A maid pretending to be you? Which maid in Cloud Spirit Palace looks like a man? Ji Tianqing, can't you at least make up a better lie? Can you please think before you speak?" As he spoke, he said Qian Yu, and Qian Yu said, "You, of course, Qian Yu, Qian Yu, Qian Yu's. Qian Ian Qian, and Yu, Qian Ian. Ji Tianqing frowned and shouted, "Zhu Fifan. Both of you shut up." Bailey Ningsu saw the two of them bickering and finally spoke up. Ji Tianqing and Zhu Fifan immediately stopped quarreling, and turned to look at her. Bailey Ningsu's cheeks and lips were as pale as paper, and her breath was a little chaotic and weak. She looked at Ji Tianqing indifferently, and said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, even if I believe that you are innocent, someone might have pretended to be you and tried to assassinate me. However, no matter how good the disguise is, it can only imitate a person's appearance and voice, but it can't imitate your breath. Everyone's breath is different, and they all have their own characteristics. I am no stranger to your breath, and the person who tried to assassinate me just now was clearly your breath. Ji Tianqing, how do you explain this?" This. Ji Tianqing was suddenly speechless, and he frowned hard. Hundreds of thoughts flashed through his mind, and he racked his brain to think of an explanation. At the same time, his eyes swept across the messy room, trying to find some clues to analyze the truth. Zhu Fifan saw that he was silent, and sneered, "Ji Tianqing, you have nothing to say, right? You can't argue, right?" Ji Tianqing suddenly thought of something, and suddenly a light flashed through his mind. He looked at Bailey Ningsu with burning eyes, and said seriously, "Auntie, what you just said is wrong. Ordinary disguise is naturally unable to imitate another person's breath. However, you should know about the Murong family. Their inherited secret technique can not only imitate another person's appearance and voice, but also imitate a special breath." This time, without waiting for Zhu Fifan to refute, Bailey Ningsu shook her head and said coldly, "Ji Tianqing, of course I know about the Murong family's secret technique. However, this excuse of yours is too far-fetched. Could it be that someone from the Murong family sneaked into Cloud Soul Palace and pretended to be you to assassinate me? What do you think Cloud Soul Palace is? How could someone from the Murong family sneak in?" Ji Tianqing was once again speechless, unable to refute. Bailey Ningsu looked at him indifferently, and continued, "You just said that you've been cultivating in Hefeng Garden for the past 2 days, and you haven't even stepped out of the door. Then let me ask you, other than your pet, who can testify for you? Ji Tianqing frowned in thought for a moment, then quickly said, for the past few days, a maid named Xiao Yi has been serving me in Hefeng Garden. She can testify for me. In fact, Xiao Yi was Yunyao's trusted maid, and she was purposely arranged to serve Ji Tianqing in Hefeng Garden. Bailey Ningsu looked at a guard commander, and ordered, "Go to Hefeng Garden and bring the maid Xiao Yi here." Understood. The guard commander cupped his fists and accepted the order, then quickly left the room and rushed to Hefeng Garden. The room fell into silence, and everyone waited patiently. Soon, a quarter of an hour passed. The guard commander came back with a delicate and pretty maid. It was Xiao Yi. Everyone's eyes suddenly gathered on her, revealing an expectant look. Xiao Yi's figure was slightly thin, and her personality was simple and introverted. She had never seen such a big scene, and after being brought into the room, she timidly lowered her head, feeling very nervous. "Servant Xiao Yi greets mistress." Xiao Yi trembled as she walked in front of Bailey Ningsu, and respectfully bowed. Bailey Ningsu looked at her indifferently, and asked in a dignified tone, "Xiao Yi, I ask you, for the past 2 days, has Ji Tianqing been cultivating in Hefeng Garden?" Xiao Yi didn't dare to speak, and only nodded, "Yes." Hearing her answer honestly, Ji Tianqing secretly let out a sigh of relief. Zhu Fifan frowned, and his expression was somewhat gloomy. Bailey Ningsu continued to ask Xiao Yi, "An hour ago, was Ji Tianqing still cultivating in his room? Did he leave Hefeng Garden?" This. Xiao Yi suddenly hesitated, and didn't dare to speak. "Speak. If you dare lie to me, I won't forgive you." Bailey Ningsu's voice was ice-cold as she shouted. Chapter 752. Xiao Yi's reply caused everyone's expression to change. Bailey Ningsu expressionlessly looked at her and continued to ask, "You were ordered to serve Ji Tianqing in Hefeng Garden, but you weren't there. Where did you go?" Xiao Yi fearfully lowered her head, her voice carrying a sobbing tone. "This servant followed eldest Mrs. orders and went to the kitchen to bring young Master Ji some spiritual porridge. For the past 2 days, after nightfall, this servant would go to the kitchen and leave for an hour. When this servant brought the spiritual porridge back to Hefeng Garden, young Master Ji was no longer in his room." Hearing her reply, Ji Tianqing's expression immediately changed, his heart cursing. But he also knew that what Xiao Yi said was the truth. Bailey Ningsu glanced at Ji Tianqing, then continued to ask Xiao Yi, "Then do you know when Ji Tianqing left Hefeng Garden?" "Mistress, this servant also doesn't know." Xiao Yi didn't dare to hide anything and could only answer truthfully. Bailey Ningsu took a deep breath, suppressing the anger in her heart. Expressionlessly, she said, "You may withdraw." "Yes." Xiao Yi replied. She hurriedly bowed and left the room. After Xiao Yi left, Bailey Ningsu looked at Ji Tianqing, her voice cold as ice. "Ji Tianqing, Xiao Yi can't prove your innocence. What else do you have to say?" Ji Tianqing's expression was somewhat unsightly, but he could only speak with sincerity, "Aunt, I know you don't believe me, but this is indeed a coincidence. This incident happened so suddenly. Please give me some time. I will definitely find out the truth and prove my innocence." Bailey Ningsu shook her head, expressionlessly saying, "No need to say anything more. As for the truth of the matter, I will be able to discern it." After saying that, she looked at the 2 elders beside her and ordered in a deep voice, "Elders, take Ji Tianqing away and lock him up in the ice prison. Guard him strictly. After I report this matter to the family head, we will convict him." "Aunt." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed an anxious expression, still wanting to explain. However, Bailey Ningsu had already closed her eyes, clearly unwilling to listen to him. The 2 elders no longer hesitated, their faces cold as ice as they walked to Ji Tianqing's side. They stretched out their steel-like hands and grabbed his arms. The two of them grabbed his arms, one on the left and one on the right, and walked out of Bailey Ningsu's room. The two elders of the Yun clan were experts, both at the 7th or 8th level of Sky Origin stage. If Ji Tianqing struggled with all his might, there was a great chance that he would be able to break free and escape from the two elders. But if he really did that, there would be another conflict, and the conflict between him and Cloud Spirit Palace would become even more intense. It would only make this matter harder to explain clearly. Thus, he could only keep his calm and let the two elders to hold him. Not long after, the two elders escorted him out of the Thousand Cloud Palace, heading towards the ice prison deep underground. Xian Yu was not captured, but it was worried about Ji Tianqing's safety, so it followed Ji Tianqing all the way, unwilling to leave. After a while, Ji Tianqing was about to be taken to the underground ice prison. Seeing Xian Yu still following him, he said to it with a serious face, "Xian Yu, you can't follow me to the ice prison. Go back now and look for Yao Yao immediately. Tell her about this matter clearly. Madame Yun won't believe me, only Yao Yao will. Maybe she can help me find out the truth. This is my only chance to clear my name and prove my innocence." Xian Yu understood the urgency of the situation, so it quickly stopped and nodded. It said seriously, "Old Ji, don't worry. I will go find Yun Yao now. Don't worry, we will find a way to save you and prove your innocence." After that, Xian Yu quickly turned around and left. Ji Tianqing was escorted by two elders. They passed through the dimly lit tunnel and walked towards the depths of the underground. Not long after, he was taken to the ice prison. The ice prison was a prison built by the Yun family in the mountains. It was protected by a powerful array and was guarded by many elite guards. The entire prison was made of ice. The temperature was so low that even the air was frozen. If an Origin Core stage martial artist was imprisoned here, they would have to endure the corrosion of the extremely cold air at all times, and would definitely experience a pain worse than death. Although Sky Origin stage cultivators could withstand the extreme cold, they would still find it unbearable. Both their minds and bodies would be tortured. After all, the ice prison was dark, cold, and silent. It made people feel sad and lonely. Ji Tianqing was locked in a prison cell with a radius of 5 meters. The entire prison cell was made of ice bricks and was sealed by an invisible array. There was nothing in the prison cell. The walls were white and there was no other color. After the door of the prison cell was closed and the two elders left, the prison cell fell into silence. Ji Tianqing stood alone in the prison cell. He thought about what had happened and tried to find some clues. He still couldn't figure out who wanted to frame him. Why did they do it? What was their goal? Inside the Thousand Cloud Palace, the lights were bright and the atmosphere was tense. Bailey Ningsu and the others left the room and entered the main hall. The guards and maids were standing guard outside the main hall. There were only a few people in the main hall. Bailey Ningsu sat on a jade lotus platform. Her face was pale and her eyes were closed. She was recuperating from her injuries. Her father, Divine Dr. Bailey, had heard the news and rushed over. He was using a soul secret technique to help her expel the poison and treat her injuries. Even the head of the family, Yun Zhongqi, was alarmed. He stood beside Bailey Ningsu and looked at her with concern. His face was full of worry. He already knew what had happened. His mood was very complicated and heavy. At this moment, a graceful figure in a long white dress stepped through the door like a gust of wind and entered the hall. It was Yun Yao. She had just learned that her mother had been assassinated and rushed over as fast as she could. Swoosh! Yun Yao rushed into the main hall. When she saw Bailey Ningsu covered in blood and in a miserable state, her face was full of worry. She saw that her grandfather was treating her mother. She didn't dare to disturb him. She looked at her father, Yun Zhongqi, and asked in a low voice, "Father, How are my mother's injuries? Is it serious? Sigh. Yun Zhongqi sighed and said in a low voice, your mother's injuries are very serious. She was almost stabbed in the heart and died on the spot. Moreover, the assassin's dagger was dipped in poison. It has already entered her heart. Yun Zhongqi saw that Yun Yao's expression changed drastically. He was extremely worried. He quickly comforted her, Yao Yao, don't worry. Your grandfather is here. Your mother will be fine. Only then did Yun Yao feel a little relieved. She asked in a gloomy tone, Father, have you caught the assassin? Who is so vicious and savage that they dared to assassinate my mother in Cloud Spirit Palace? Yun Zhongqi glanced at her and said with a strange expression, the assassin is Ji Tianqing. Chapter 753. Yun Yao was originally filled with anger and worry when her mother was assassinated in the Thousand Cloud Palace. However, when she heard her father's words, she felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her body froze on the spot. She couldn't believe that the assassin was Ji Tianqing. If her father hadn't said those words, she would have thought that she had misheard. How is this possible? After regaining her senses, Yun Yao shook her head subconsciously and said firmly, Father, I don't believe that Tianqing would do such a thing. How could he assassinate my mother? There must be a problem. There must be some misunderstanding. Yun Yao was agitated and her reaction was a little intense. She couldn't accept this answer at all. Yun Zhongqi had expected her reaction. He said with a serious face, Yao Yao, I know that you don't believe that Ji Tianqing did it. In fact, I had the same thought as you when I first found out about this. However, how could your mother make up a lie? Your cousin and the guards all saw Ji Tianqing assassinate your mother with their own eyes. Your mother even gave Ji Tianqing a chance to prove his innocence. However, he couldn't produce any evidence to shirk his responsibility. The facts are all there. The evidence is irrefutable. Yao Yao, you can only accept this fact. Yun Yao's mood became more and more gloomy. Her thoughts were a little chaotic and tears welled up in her eyes. She still couldn't believe this result. She shook her head with all her might and said, No. I still can't believe that Tianqing is not that kind of person. Yao Yao. Yun Zhongqi shouted sternly and said coldly, It has already happened. Your mother almost lost her life. Are you still going to be stubborn? You may know a person for a long time, but you can't judge his heart. You think you know Ji Tianqing very well, but who can really see through someone's heart? Yun Yao couldn't refute. She could only shake her head and deny it. Tears flowed from her eyes. She couldn't imagine that in just a few hours without seeing Ji Tianqing, something like this would happen and cause such a big mess. On one side was her biological mother, and on the other was the person she loved, but they suddenly became life and death enemies. She was sandwiched between the two of them and didn't know what to do. Yun Zhongqi also understood that she was the one with the most chaotic and sorrowful emotions right now, so he didn't say anything else. He sighed in his heart and said calmly, All right, Yao Yao, let father handle this matter. Go back to your room and rest. Yun Yao quickly wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and calmed down. She looked up at Yun Zhongqi and asked in a low voice, Father, have you caught Tianqing? Where is he now? Yun Zhongqi was silent for a moment before he nodded and said, He's locked in the ice prison. You can go and see him. Why don't you ask him yourself why he was so cruel and did such a vicious thing to your mother? However, Yao Yao, don't even think about secretly letting him go. Father has already sent some experts to guard the ice prison. Without father's orders, he won't be able to leave the ice prison. Yun Zhongqi knew Yun Yao's personality very well. He guessed that she might take the opportunity to let Ji Tianqing go, so he reminded her. Yun Yao nodded silently. She bowed and bid farewell to Yun Zhongqi before she turned and left the main hall. She walked out of the thousand-cloud palace expressionlessly and rushed to the ice prison with a sorrowful expression. Although she had calmed down, her thoughts were still a little messy and her emotions were very complicated. Her subconscious told her that this was definitely not Ji Tianqing's doing. There must be something else behind it. However, she was also a little afraid. She was afraid that this was the truth and that Ji Tianqing was the assassin. After all, her mother had always been prejudiced against Ji Tianqing and was unwilling to accept him. What if Ji Tianqing held a grudge against her and tried to assassinate her out of anger? Yunyao didn't dare to think about it anymore. Her heart was in a mess and she didn't know how to face it. Just as she passed by a palace and reached the corner of the Bluestone Road, she suddenly heard a call from the dark side of the road. Yunyao. Wait a minute. Yunyao immediately stopped and turned to look at the source of the voice. She saw an ice-blue ice fox hiding in the dark. She naturally recognized it. It was Ji Tianqing's pet, Qianyu. Qianyu looked at her with a hopeful face. It waved its little paws and shouted in a low voice, "Yunyao, come here quickly. Old Ji asked me to pass you a message." Yunyao quickly walked in front of Qianyu and asked expectantly, "Qianyu, what message did Tianqing ask you to pass me?" Qianyu looked around and saw that there was no one around. It lowered its voice and said, "Yunyao, tonight's incident was a conspiracy. Someone deliberately framed old Ji. I saw a maid pretending to be old Ji and rushing to the Qianyun palace with my own eyes." When Yunyao heard this, the haze that shrouded her heart immediately dissipated, and the worries in her heart were immediately resolved. Sure enough. I knew that Tianqing was not that kind of person. She showed a look of surprise and asked quickly, "Qianyu, tell me quickly, what's going on?" Qianyu quickly explained the matter in detail, and after he finished, he said with a somewhat depressed tone, "Although this matter is inconceivable, but it is absolutely true. They don't want to believe me." "Yunyao, you should believe me, right? It's a pity that old Ji was caught and put in the ice prison. I can't find the guy who pretended to be old Ji. Otherwise, the truth would definitely be revealed." Yunyao understood the whole story and immediately calmed down. She quickly nodded and said, "Qianyu, of course I believe you. And I have always believed that Tianqing would not assassinate my mother." Qianyu heaved a sigh of relief and said in a serious tone, "Old Ji said that even if the world doesn't believe him, as long as you still believe him, he will be satisfied. He was willing to be caught and put in the ice prison because he didn't want things to get out of hand and completely fall out with the Cloud Spirit Palace. He is waiting for you in the ice prison. Only you can help him find out the truth and prove his innocence. Okay, let's go to the ice prison to visit him first. Then, we will think of a way." After that, Yunyao quickly brought Qianyu to the ice prison. Soon, Yunyao and Qianyu went through the underground tunnel and entered the ice prison's entrance. There was a giant ice door that was 100 meters tall at the entrance. It was tightly shut and there were 4 powerhouses of the ethereal origin stage standing guard on both sides of the door. Seeing this, Yunyao knew that her father did not lie to her. If she wanted to let Ji Tianqing escape from the ice prison, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. She told the guards the purpose of her visit. The guards opened the door and allowed her and Qianyu to enter. After a while, she entered the depths of the ice prison and saw Ji Tianqing outside the door of a cell. Ji Tianqing was sitting cross-legged in the cell. His eyes were closed and he was cultivating. His expression was calm and indifferent. Yunyao was relieved to see that he was safe and sound. "Tianqing, I am here." Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing through the cell's window and said with concern. Chapter 754. Yao Yao, you're here. Ji Tianqing walked to the door and greeted Yunyao through the window of the ice crystal cell door. "Yao Yao, I didn't do this, Yun Yao was so close to him, but they were separated by the ice crystal cell door. She was in a very bitter mood. She stared at Ji Tianqing and interrupted him. Tianqing, don't say any more. I believe you. I always have. Ji Tianqing looked at her silently with a gentle smile on his face. Even though the prison was bone-chillingly cold, his heart was filled with warmth. The two of them were connected, so he could naturally feel that Yun Yao trusted him unconditionally. When her mother was assassinated and almost lost her life, Yun Yao still believed in him unconditionally. This was the most commendable thing about him. What more could a man ask for when he could have such a confidant in his life? The two of them stared at each other, their eyes burning with passion. Qian Yu was silent for a long time. Finally, she couldn't help but say, ahem. Old Ji, Yun Yao, can we talk about business first and find a way to solve this problem? After old Ji has cleared his name and proved his innocence, you two can do whatever you want. It won't be a problem for you to do it for a night. Ji Tianqing glared at Qian Yu, and Qian Yu quickly shut up. Yun Yao said seriously, Tianqing, although I believe that you didn't do it, we can't provide any evidence. My parents also refuse to believe you. Do you have any evidence or clues? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, I don't have any evidence for the time being, but I just thought about it carefully. There are many suspicious points in this matter. As long as we analyze it calmly, it won't be difficult to find out the truth. Yun Yao immediately showed an expectant look and nodded, okay. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought. Then, he said in a low voice, before tonight's incident, Qian Yu saw a maid pretending to be me and rushing to the Thousand Cloud Palace. This meant that the murderer was a young woman. The murderer was able to smoothly enter the Thousand Cloud Palace to commit murder without arousing anyone's suspicions. Not even your mother was alerted. This meant that the culprit was very familiar with the situation in Cloud Spirit Palace, especially the Thousand Cloud Palace. Moreover, your mother is a Sky Origin stage cultivator. How could the murderer injure your mother and escape in front of so many people? It proves that the killer is at least at the 6th level of Sky Origin stage. Yun Yao listened attentively to Ji Tianqing's analysis and suddenly felt enlightened. She quickly nodded in agreement. That's right. Tianqing, you are right. The murderer is a young lady who is at the 6th level of Sky Origin stage. She is quite familiar with the Cloud Soul Palace. If we investigate according to these requirements, we can greatly reduce the scope of suspicion, and we will soon find out the truth. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and continued in a serious tone, in addition, the murderer can imitate my appearance, voice, and aura. This is also very strange. Only the secret martial art of the Murong clan can imitate someone else's aura. So, the murderer must be related to the Murong clan. He paused for a while and then continued, the murderer pretended to be me and tried to frame me. She wanted me to become the enemy of the Cloud Soul Palace and completely break off our relationship. Who would hate me so much and want to destroy the relationship between the Cloud Soul Palace and me? Only the Duanmu clan and the Murong clan. Yun Yao nodded in agreement. She said, that's right. Tianqing, with your analysis, we are getting closer to the truth. The murderer who tried to assassinate my mother must have been ordered by the Murong clan or the Duanmu clan. But who could it be? There are many young ladies in the Cloud Soul Palace, and many of them are at the Sky Origin stage. Ji Tianqing kept silent and thought for a while. Suddenly, he had an idea. Yao Yao, I suddenly thought of someone who fits all these requirements. He is very suspicious. Who? Yun Yao immediately raised her head and looked at him. Her eyes were full of expectation and doubt. Ji Tianqing said with a serious face, your mother's personal maid, Yun Luo. Yun Luo? How could it be her? Yun Yao's face was full of shock. She couldn't believe it. Tianqing, although Yun Luo basically meets the requirements you've mentioned, she's my mother's trusted bodyguard. She has been in the Cloud Soul Palace for more than 10 years. She has always been loyal to the Yun clan. She even blocked a sword for my mother and almost lost her life. How could she be ordered by the Murong clan and the Duanmu clan to pretend to be you and assassinate my mother? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while. Then, he calmly said, Yao Yao, I know you can't believe it. But this is only my speculation. If we want to find the truth, we must make bold guesses and investigate carefully. We can't miss any suspicious person. The reason why I suspect Yun Luo is because she is very suspicious. Yun Luo is your mother's personal guard. But when the murderer tried to assassinate your mother, why wasn't she there to protect her? When I rushed to your mother's room, she wasn't there. Where did she go during this time? Hearing this, Yun Yao fell silent. She frowned and thought for a while. Then, she replied, I just went to the Thousand Cloud Palace and asked my father. He told me everything. Before the incident happened, Yun Luo was in the room with my mother. My mother suddenly remembered something and wanted to talk to you in private. So, she sent Yun Luo to Hefeng Garden to find you. Who knew that not long after Yun Luo left, the murderer would pretend to be you and enter my mother's room to assassinate her? Hearing this, Ji Tianqing suddenly frowned, and a glint flashed in his eyes. Yao Yao, you just said, your mother sent Yun Luo to Hefeng Garden to inform me? But Yun Luo never came to Hefeng Garden. It was Qian Yu who came back to inform me. Then, I went to Thousand Cloud Palace with her. Before we even arrived at Thousand Cloud Palace, the incident had already happened. At this point, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a cold light. He said coldly, Humph. It seems that Yun Luo is too suspicious. The murderer is most likely her. Yun Yao instinctively didn't want to believe that Yun Luo was the murderer. After all, Yun Luo had served Bailey Ningsu in Cloud Spirit Palace for more than 10 years. She had always been loyal and devoted. She didn't look like a spy from the Duanmu or Murong family. However, Ji Tianqing's analysis of all the clues pointed to Yun Luo. She had no choice but to accept reality. With a serious expression, she muttered, could the murderer really be her? Why would she do that? When did she become a spy for the Murong and Duanmu families? Yao Yao, now is not the time to think about this. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said with a gloomy expression, the most important thing now is to investigate Yun Luo's crimes as soon as possible and let the truth come to light. Perhaps, we can think of a way to make Yun Luo reveal her true identity and purpose. Yun Yao understood what he meant and immediately nodded in agreement. Chapter 755. Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he thought of an idea and his eyes flashed with a bright light. Yao Yao, I have an idea. Yun Yao was deep in thought when she was awakened by his voice. She immediately raised her head and looked at him with an expectant gaze. Tianqing, what idea have you come up with? Ji Tianqing revealed a confident smile. Yao Yao, I have a way to find the real culprit and make her reveal her true identity. However, I'll need your father's help. Yao Yao, hurry and find your father. I want to discuss this with him face to face. Alright, I'll go now. Yun Yao hurriedly nodded in agreement and turned to leave the ice prison. Inside the Thousand Cloud Palace. Inside a heavily guarded secret room, two people were conversing in low voices. These two people were Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu. Bailey Ningsu's injuries, after being treated by Divine Dr. Bailey, were no longer a problem. The poison in her body had been neutralized, but her body was still weak. She would be fully recovered after 2 or 3 months of recuperation. She sat on a jade throne with a pale face as she silently pondered. Yun Zhongqi stood beside her with his hands behind his back. He stared at the wall with a burning gaze. After a moment of silence, Yun Zhongqi suddenly asked, "Madam, do you really think that the culprit is Ji Tianqing?" Bailey Ningsu shook her head. "It shouldn't be him. It's most likely that someone impersonated him and tried to assassinate me. Although the assassin said that he tried to assassinate me because I stopped him from being with Yao Yao, that's a bit far-fetched. It's not enough for him to try and kill me, especially at a time like this. Also, I don't think Ji Tianqing is the type of person who's two-faced and vicious." Yun Zhongqi nodded and said with a solemn expression, "That's right, I think so too. Ji Tianqing wouldn't do something like this, especially in such a clumsy manner. The culprit did this to destroy our relationship with Ji Tianqing and turn him against Cloud Soul Palace. I'm afraid that only the Duanmu family and the Murong family would be so eager to deal with us." Bailey Ningsu frowned, her face filled with worry as she continued, "The reason why I locked him in the ice prison was to find out the truth and find out who the real culprit is. There is actually a spy in our Yun family, and it is very likely that there is more than one. I want to take this opportunity to find the spy and clean up Cloud Spirit Palace. If we don't find out who the spy is, there will be even more trouble in the future." Yun Zhongqi nodded in agreement and asked in a deep voice, "It seems like Madam already has a countermeasure?" Bailey Ningsu said calmly, "I've already sent people from the Hidden Cloud Pavilion to seal off Cloud Soul Palace and investigate all suspicious people. Also, I was waiting for Ji Tianqing's reaction. I wanted to see if he could come up with a solution. Although he was a world-renowned martial arts genius, he was still too young and still had a long way to go. If you want to become a true peerless expert, talent alone isn't enough. You also need to have enough wisdom and methods." Yun Zhongqi silently listened and didn't interrupt, but he agreed with her thoughts. Bailey Ningsu paused for a moment before continuing, "Ji Tianqing and the Duanmu family are already irreconcilable. It is inevitable that the Duanmu family will seek revenge and plot against him. This matter is just the beginning. The Duanmu family will definitely come up with even more schemes and plots. If Ji Tianqing can't solve these problems and plots, how can he fight against the Duanmu family? If he can't even protect himself, how can he protect Yao Yao? How can I be at ease in entrusting Yao Yao to him?" Yun Zhongqi nodded and said in a heavy voice, "Of course I understand the pitiful hearts of parents. Madam, you've always been thinking for Yao Yao. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made things difficult for Ji Tianqing. From Ji Tianqing's previous actions, I believe that he will quickly find a way to resolve this crisis." Bailey Ningsu didn't reply and only nodded silently. At that moment, a guard's voice came from outside the secret room. "Reporting to family head, eldest miss requests an audience." Yun Zhongqi raised his brows and said in a dignified voice, "Let eldest miss in." With that said, he waved his hand and released a ray of light, opening the secret room's stone door. Yun Yao immediately walked into the secret room and bowed to Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu. "Father, I just went to the ice prison to see Tianqing. Father, mother, you must believe in Tianqing. He's been wrongly accused. Someone is deliberately trying to frame him." Yun Zhongqi nodded slightly and said with a calm expression, "Ao Yao, apart from this, what else did Ji Tianqing say?" Yun Yao hurriedly said, "Father, Tianqing wants to see you. He wants to discuss something with you. He has a way to find the real culprit and reveal the truth." Hearing her words, Yun Zhongqi and Bailey Ningsu looked at each other, revealing a look of understanding. Yun Zhongqi stroked his beard and nodded. "All right, I'll go to the ice prison to see him now." With that said, he calmly left the secret room and rushed to the underground ice prison. Half an hour later, he entered the depths of the underground prison and met with Ji Tianqing in the ice prison. One of them stood in the prison cell while the other stood at the door. They looked at each other through the ice crystal door. Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and bowed to Yun Zhongqi. He said with concern, "Greetings, Uncle Yun. How are Auntie's injuries?" Yun Zhongqi nodded slightly and said with his spiritual sense, your auntie's injuries are no longer serious. You don't need to worry. Let's talk business. Do you have a way to find the real culprit? In order to keep it a secret, Ji Tianqing also said with his spiritual sense. He said with a serious tone, the culprit pretended to be me and tried to frame me. He wanted to sever ties with Cloud Soul Palace and turn us against each other. Not long ago, the Duanmu Huang tried to kill me outside Zhongzhou City. I sent a message to Uncle and you personally came to save me. The Duanmu Huang recognized you and knew about our relationship. Therefore, the culprit was most likely ordered by the Duanmu Huang. The Duanmu family is the most suspicious. However, the culprit not only pretended to be me, but also imitated my aura. This means that the Murong family is also involved. If the Duanmu family and the Murong family work together to deal with us, their goal is not only to deal with me, but also the Yun family. The fact that the culprit tried to assassinate Auntie means that their goal is the Yun family as well. Yun Zhongqi silently listened to him and nodded his head in agreement. Tianqing, since you've analyzed all these clues, do you have a way to deal with this? Ji Tianqing nodded with a serious expression. He said with a playful tone, my way is to beat them at their own game and lure them out. Beat them at their own game? Yun Zhongqi raised his eyebrows and revealed a look of interest. Chapter 756. The Thousand Cloud Palace was brightly lit and filled with people. Bailey Ningsu was sitting in the main hall on the first floor, resting on a large chair with her eyes closed. Yun Luo, who was dressed as a maid, stood behind her with an expressionless face and a respectful posture. Yun Luo had regained her usual cold and stern temperament, without any abnormalities. In addition, there were 6 guards and a few maids standing respectfully to the side. The main hall was quiet, with only the occasional clanking sound from the second floor breaking the silence of the night. The Yun family's craftsmen were repairing the walls and windows, redecorating Bailey Ningsu's room. At this moment, in the night sky not far away, an earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out. Following that, a series of loud and muffled bangs could be heard. Along with the loud bangs, there was a dazzling 5-colored light that rushed into the sky, illuminating the dark night. There was also a violent true essence fluctuation coming from the depths of the earth. Such a huge commotion immediately alarmed the entire Cloud Spirit Palace, causing countless people to wake up in shock. Bailey Ningsu and the others in the Thousand Cloud Palace were also awakened, their faces full of confusion. Bailey Ningsu opened her eyes and frowned. She looked at the night sky in the east and asked in a deep voice, "What's that sound? What's going on?" Many of the maids and guards in the hall were bewildered. They did not understand what was going on. Only Yun Luo frowned and thought for a moment. She guessed something and quickly replied, reporting to Madam, "This commotion seems to be coming from the underground ice prison. There should be experts fighting." Just as she finished speaking, in the night sky not far away, there was another series of loud rumbles. Several houses were shattered by the violent shockwaves, turning into ruins and sending dust into the air. Chaotic and panicked screams immediately rang out, and the shouts and battle cries of many guards spread through the night sky. Hearing the ruckus, Bailey Ningsu's face turned serious, and she ordered the guards, "What are you still standing around for? Quickly go and see what's going on." "Yes, sir." The guards cupped their hands in salute and immediately turned to leave. A strange look flashed across Yun Luo's eyes. She hurriedly took a step forward and took the initiative to request, "Madam, let this servant go. If there really is an unforeseen event, this servant can also help." Bailey Ningsu nodded in agreement without hesitation. "That's good too. Go on then." Yun Luo quickly ran out of the lobby and rushed towards the underground ice prison as fast as lightning. Shwa! She rushed out of Thousand Cloud Palace, turned into a stream of light and flew into the night sky, flying towards the east. At this moment, she could clearly see that the loud noise and dazzling five-colored spiritual light were indeed coming from the underground ice prison. Quite a few buildings near the ice prison had already collapsed. Hundreds of Yun family disciples and servants were fleeing in panic. There were also more than a dozen guards holding swords and sabers that flashed with cold light. They were shouting and shouting as they scattered in all directions, searching for something in Cloud Spirit Palace. The entire Cloud Spirit Palace was in a state of panic. Everyone was in a state of panic. Shouts of killing could be heard everywhere. Seeing this scene, Yun Luo's heart was filled with anticipation. She quickly rushed to the entrance of the ice prison. She saw that the ground at the entrance of the ice prison had been shattered, leaving behind many deep holes. Yun Luo quickly passed through the underground passage and quickly entered the ice prison. The ice crystal door of the ice prison had already been opened. There was a huge crack on the door. The ground and the surrounding walls were filled with traces of fighting. There were also many dark red bloodstains. There were even several bloody corpses lying on the ground. They were all guards who guarded the ice prison. When Yun Luo rushed to the depths of the ice prison, she saw several guard commanders and a Yun family elder surrounding a thin and dignified middle-aged man. That was the patriarch, Yun Zhongqi. He leaned against the corner of the wall with a pale face. His hands were clutching his chest. The clothes on his chest were dyed red with blood. There was a hideous wound that was constantly bleeding. His injuries were very serious. His aura was chaotic and manic. He was roaring in anger. Damn it! This bastard is actually so vicious. Seeing this, Yun Luo's eyes flashed with doubt. She quickly went over. The elders of the Yun family and the commanders of the guards all looked at Yun Zhongqi with concern and asked about his injuries. Patriarch, how did you get injured? Who did this? Patriarch, we will send you back to treat your injuries. You must hold on. Nothing must happen to you. Yun Luo was very confused. Yun Zhongqi was a powerful soul-tempering stage cultivator. Who could injure him so severely? At this time, Yun Zhongqi stood up with the help of two guard commanders. His face was pale as he ordered, "Second Elder. Pass down my order immediately. Seal Cloud Spirit Palace and close the door. No matter what, we must find that bastard. We must not let him escape from Cloud Spirit Palace." The second elder hurriedly nodded and accepted the order. Then, he turned around and left with an ice-cold complexion. He quickly issued the order. Soon after, a few guards escorted Yun Zhongqi out of the ice prison. The situation was urgent, so no one cared about Yun Luo. After all, she was only a servant. Her status was not high. Yun Luo looked around and saw that the ice prison was in a mess. A fierce battle had indeed occurred here, so he turned around and left. She quickly found a guard commander and asked, "What's going on? Why is the patriarch injured?" The guard commander shouted angrily, "It's that bastard Ji Tianqing. The patriarch just gave the order to execute him. He attacked the patriarch when he was unprepared and severely injured the patriarch. We tried to kill him, but he killed quite a few of our guards, allowing him to escape from the ice prison. However, he was also injured by the patriarch. Even if he escaped from the ice prison, he can't escape from Cloud Spirit Palace. He must be hiding." After the guard commander finished speaking, he hurriedly left the ice prison and led a team of guards to search Cloud Spirit Palace. Ji Tianqing can't defend himself. Not only did he commit the crime of assassinating the madam, he also injured the patriarch and escaped. This time, he is completely finished. He will never be able to clear his name. Yun Luo sneered in her heart and quickly left the ice prison. After a while, she returned to the main hall of Thousand Cloud Palace and reported the matter to Bailey Ningsu. After hearing the report, Bailey Ningsu was so angry that her face turned pale. Her eyes were filled with a cold light. Bastard! Ji Tianqing, this bastard, he is crazy. Cloud Spirit Palace and he cannot exist together. We must cut him into pieces. Bailey Ningsu angrily cursed and quickly asked Yun Luo, how is the patriarch's injury? Is his life in danger? Chapter 757. For the rest of the night, Cloud Spirit Palace was in chaos. Almost all the guards in the palace were out, looking for Ji Tianqing's whereabouts. The gates of Cloud Spirit Palace were closed, and all the exits were guarded by strong cultivators. With such tight security, not even a fly could fly out of Cloud Spirit Palace. It was almost impossible for Ji Tianqing to escape from Cloud Spirit Palace. Everyone in Cloud Spirit Palace was in a state of panic. Countless disciples and servants of the Yun family knew that Ji Tianqing had tried to assassinate the mistress and injured the patriarch. In just one night, Ji Tianqing went from being the crown prince of the Yun family and the future son-in-law of the Yun family to being Cloud Spirit Palace's mortal enemy. Not only was the Yun family dumbfounded by such a shocking turn of events, even the guests who had arrived at Cloud Spirit Palace ahead of time were shocked beyond words. Yun Luo had been secretly observing the situation, paying attention to the situation in Cloud Spirit Palace and the movements of the guards. At first, she had some doubts. She could not believe that Ji Tianqing had really injured Yun Zhongqi and completely cut ties with the Yun family. However, after half a night of observation, she was completely sure of this matter and no longer had any doubts. Therefore, she used a secret communication technique that she had not used for many years and sent the news out of Cloud Spirit Palace. At dawn, the sky was just starting to turn white. In Autumn Wind City, thousands of miles away from Cloud Spirit Palace, a house in the south of the city was still sleeping peacefully in the morning fog. In a secret room in the depths of the house, Duanmu Huang was sitting on a large chair with his eyes closed, quietly waiting for something. At this moment, Xing Jian, the head of the soul husbandry sect, pushed open the stone door of the secret room and quickly walked in. Patriarch, Luo sent a message. Xing Jian bowed respectfully and held a palm-sized jade spiritual slip in front of Duanmu Huang. This jade spiritual slip was a special Dharma artifact used to transmit important messages. It could be sent thousands of miles away in half an hour. This item was called a communication jade slip. It was priceless and very precious. In the central continent, only the imperial courts and the top aristocratic families had the qualifications and financial resources to use communication jade slips to transmit messages. Duanmu Huang, who was resting with his eyes closed, immediately opened his eyes when he heard Xing Jian's words. His eyes were filled with anticipation. You've come just in time. I've been waiting for a long time. Duanmu Huang smiled and quickly reached out to receive the communication jade slip. He used his spiritual energy to cast a secret technique and read the message in the jade slip. A moment later, he finished reading Yun Luo's message and immediately revealed an excited expression. Ji Tianqing's crime has been confirmed, and he won't be able to clear his name even if he jumps into the East Sea. Cloud Spirit Palace had fallen into chaos, and Yun Zhongqi had been severely injured. This was great. That's great. My plan has finally succeeded. Ha ha ha. Duanmu Huang laughed excitedly. His tone was full of pride. Xing Jian also revealed a trace of a smile and hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed, "Congratulations, Patriarch, congratulations, Patriarch." "May I ask what we should do next, Patriarch?" Duanmu Huang's emotions calmed down. He held the communication jade slip in his hand and said in a cold voice, "What else can we do? Of course, we'll take advantage of his weakness and kill him. We'll completely destroy the Yun family. I've already placed a spy in Cloud Spirit Palace and prepared everything. I'll now send a message to Luo and have her meet with the spy. The spy will then give her the soul reaping bell." Soul reaping bell? Xing Jian's pupils constricted, and a shocked expression appeared on his face. Patriarch, are you talking about the precious treasure of the Yin Hun clan that we took 12 years ago when we destroyed them? Duanmu Huang nodded with a cold smile on his face. That's right. The soul reaping bell is a magic treasure that specializes in restraining spiritual energy. It's very powerful and very insidious. With Luo's status, she should be able to smoothly approach Yun Zhongqi. Yun Zhongqi was severely injured, and his strength had greatly decreased. He was at his weakest. As long as Luo catches him off guard, she can use the power of the soul-reaping bell to kill Yun Zhongqi on the spot. Even if she can't kill Yun Zhongqi, she can still severely injure Yun Zhongqi's spiritual energy and cause his strength to greatly decrease. Once the spiritual energy is severely injured, it will take hundreds of years for it to recover. At that time, won't Yun Zhongqi be at my mercy? Ha ha ha. After hearing Duanmu Huang's words, Xing Jian revealed a look of anticipation and smirked. Inside Cloud Spirit Palace. In the southeast corner, there was a beautiful garden. The trees in the garden were lush, and the fragrance was pleasant. It was early in the morning, and the garden was silent. No one was walking around. Cloud Spirit Palace had been in chaos last night, and the atmosphere was still oppressive and somber. Who would be in the mood to enjoy the scenery in the garden? However, on a small path in the depths of the garden, there was a middle-aged servant in gray linen clothes sweeping the fallen leaves with a broom. The middle-aged servant bent over and swept the floor. His movements were calm and steady, neither fast nor slow. His seemingly ordinary, turbid eyes would occasionally flash with a wisp of light. At this moment, a tall and thin servant girl appeared on the small path. She carried a box of food in her hand and walked calmly through the small path. She was about to pass through the garden and rushed to the kitchen. This person was Yun Luo. She expressionlessly walked towards the middle-aged servant. She didn't look at the servant, nor did she talk to him. However, when she passed by the middle-aged servant, the servant seemed to casually wave the broom, but his wide sleeve swept across her sleeve. Silently, 2 items fell into Yun Luo's hands. A communication jade slip made of white jade, and a black bell the size of a wine cup. This simple black bell exuded a mysterious and cold aura. It was the magic treasure, Soul Reaping Bell. Yun Luo flipped her hand and put away the 2 items. She continued to walk forward. During the entire process, the 2 didn't say a word. They didn't even make eye contact. No one would have thought that these 2 seemingly unrelated people had some kind of connection. Half an hour later, Yun Luo carried the box of food to the entrance of Cloud Spirit Palace. Cloud Spirit Palace was the most sacred and dignified palace in Cloud Spirit Palace. It was also the palace of the patriarch, Yun Zhongqi. There were more than 10 guards guarding the entrance. Among them, there were 2 Sky Origin Stage Guard commanders. One of the commanders stopped Yun Luo and expressionlessly asked her why she had come. Yun Luo calmly bowed and explained, "Mistress ordered me to go to the kitchen and bring breakfast and elixirs to the patriarch." The guard commander did his job and carefully checked the box of food. After confirming that there was no problem, he let her go. Yun Luo carried the box of food into Cloud Spirit Palace. She calmly went up to the 2nd floor and walked towards Yun Zhongqi's room. When she walked out of the room and saw that there was no one around, she took out a mask and put it on her face. In the blink of an eye, she changed her face into Ji Tianqing's. Her figure also changed slightly. Her appearance was exactly the same as Ji Tianqing's. She pushed open the door and quietly entered the room. She saw that Yun Zhongqi was sitting on the bed with his eyes closed. He was concentrating on healing his injuries. It seemed that he didn't notice her arrival. Seeing this, a cold killing intent flashed in Yun Luo's eyes. "Yun Zhongqi, your time of death has come." Chapter 758. Yun Luo was only 20 steps away from Yun Zhongqi. She arrived in front of Yun Zhongqi in an instant and channeled a vast amount of true yuan into the soul-reaping bell. The mysterious and cold black bell instantly expanded a few hundred times and became a black ancient bell that was 3 meters tall. The ancient bell lit up with the gray light of death and released a formless soul-suppressing energy that came crashing down on Yun Zhongqi's head. Yun Zhongqi was a powerful cultivator in the soul-refining stage and Yun Luo was only in the sky origin stage, so she could only unleash 50% of the soul-reaping bell's power. However, Yun Zhongqi was severely injured and his strength had decreased greatly. He was focused on healing himself and was completely unprepared. Yun Luo was confident that she could severely injure Yun Zhongqi with one strike and kill him with the soul-reaping bell. Yun Luo watched as the soul-reaping bell came crashing down on Yun Zhongqi from the sky and was about to envelop him. At this critical moment, Yun Zhongqi, who was circulating his energy to heal himself, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were clear and bright, and they shone with a sharp and cold light. His body exuded a domineering aura. At this moment, he was a powerful cultivator in the soul-refining stage. He didn't look weak at all because of his injuries at all. "Bastard, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Yun Zhongqi roared furiously like muffled thunder. He suddenly raised his palms and unleashed a dazzling white divine soul light. The white light condensed into a palm that was as large as a millstone. It carried a terrifying power as it slammed into the soul-reaping bell. Bang! With a loud bang, the soul-reaping bell was sent flying. It smashed through the roof and flew into the sky above the palace. Yun Luo was caught off guard and was pushed back by the terrifying power. Before she could react, Yun Zhongqi waved his palm again and slammed it down on her. Bang! This palm hit her abdomen and sent her flying. She slammed into the wall with a dull thud. An incomparably violent true essence power surged into her body, instantly shattering her Yuan Dan and destroying several of her meridians. Yun Luo's core and meridians were destroyed, and her cultivation was crippled by Yun Zhongqi. She rolled on the ground and coughed violently as blood poured out of her nose and mouth. However, she didn't seem to feel any pain. She struggled to get up and stared at Yun Zhongqi with wide eyes. "You're not injured? You were faking it?" Yun Zhongqi stood up and stared at her with a sharp gaze. He said in a dignified voice, "That's right. If I didn't do that, how would I have lured you out?" Tian Xing was right. "Not only do you want to deal with him, but you also want to assassinate me." Hearing Yun Zhongqi's words, Yun Luo's expression changed drastically. His heart was filled with shock and despair. She finally understood. Of Yun Luo. Of Yun Luo. It was all Yun Zhongqi and Ji Tianqing's scheme. Yun Luo stared at Yun Zhongqi in disbelief and roared in a low voice, "You put on a show with Ji Tianqing to lure me out? You sacrificed the lives of a few ice prison guards and destroyed half of the ice prison and a few houses just to make me believe you? Yun Zhongqi, you're really vicious and cruel." In fact, Yun Luo believed Yun Zhongqi because half of the ice prison and a few houses were destroyed and many guards were killed. She didn't think that it was all a trap. Before Yun Zhongqi could say anything, a secret door suddenly opened on the wall of the room. A handsome figure walked out from the secret room behind the secret door and said with a cold smile, "Huh, what's the big deal about destroying half of the ice prison and a few houses? It's just a few buildings. The craftsmen of Cloud Spirit Palace can quickly rebuild them. As for the ice prison guards who were sacrificed, they were just faking their deaths. They can easily fool you." This was the voice of a young man. His tone was full of ridicule and contempt. Yun Luo subconsciously raised her head to look. When she saw the appearance of the white-robed young man, her body shook and her eyes were filled with hatred. "Ji Tianqing. You're despicable. There was no doubt that the white-robed young man who walked out of the secret room was Ji Tianqing. Yun Luo stared at him coldly and said with gritted teeth, "No wonder the guards of Cloud Spirit Palace couldn't find you even after searching for half a night. You've been hiding in Yun Zhongqi's room all this time. Everything that happened last night was just a ruse." "That's right," Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a cold smile, "Unfortunately, you realized it too late. With your intelligence, you still want to frame me? You're too naive." Yun Luo was so ashamed and angry that she vomited blood. At this point, she understood everything. Her plan was a complete failure and her cultivation was crippled. She was completely useless. In front of Yun Zhongqi and Ji Tianqing, she didn't have the qualifications to resist. Even escaping was a fantasy. She struggled to stand up and stared at Ji Tianqing with hatred. She cursed, "Ji Tianqing, don't be so proud. Even if you can avoid this disaster, you'll still die sooner or later. Moreover, you'll die without a burial place. You'll end up 10 times worse than me." Ji Tianqing didn't get angry. He looked at her with pity and said calmly, "You won't see when I die, but you'll die soon." Yun Zhongqi stared at Yun Luo with a sharp gaze. He waved his hand and shot out a 5-colored spirit light. It condensed into a spirit light hand and grabbed Yun Luo. He looked at Yun Luo from close range and said coldly, "What a brilliant disguise technique. Even your aura is the same as Tianqing's. You really can pass off the fake as the real one. I want to see who you are. You've hidden so deeply." As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out and pinched Yun Luo's cheek and pulled off an exquisite human skin mask. Along with a light ripping sound, Yun Luo's mask was torn off, revealing his true appearance. "Yun Luo? It's really you." Yun Zhongqi frowned and a trace of shock flashed through his eyes. Previously, when Ji Tianqing told him that the murderer was most likely Yun Luo, he didn't dare to believe it. Now, he finally believed it. Yun Zhongqi was filled with anger. He grabbed Yun Luo's neck and said in a deep voice, "Yun Luo, you've been in Cloud Spirit Palace for more than 10 years and have been loyal to the Yun family. In order to protect the mistress, you blocked a sword for her and almost lost your life. Because of your loyalty, I gave you the surname Yun and let you serve the mistress. The mistress also sees you as her confidant. When were you bribed and became a spy? Speak." Yun Luo knew that he was going to die, so he gave up struggling. He revealed a sinister sneer and said in a hoarse voice, "Ha ha ha. More than 10 years ago, from the first day I entered the Yun family, I was ordered by the mistress to infiltrate." Chapter 759. What a good trick. After Yun Zhongqi heard Yun Luo's explanation, he sneered angrily. He immediately understood that the other party had been plotting for more than 10 years. Yun Luo was the spy that the other party had planted in Cloud Spirit Palace. She was the most important chess piece. Over the years, Yun Zhongqi had screened and purged the people in Cloud Spirit Palace several times. He had already eliminated dozens of spies. However, he had missed Yun Luo. He did not expect that Yun Luo was the spy who had hidden herself the most deeply. He stared at Yun Luo sharply and asked in a deep voice, "Tell me, who is your master? The Duanmu family or the Murong family?" Yun Luo did not answer. Black blood kept flowing out of her nose and mouth, and her eyes slowly closed. It turned out that she knew that she was going to die. In order to not reveal the secret, she took the opportunity when Yun Zhongqi was not on guard and secretly took the poison hidden in her teeth. In the blink of an eye, she was corroded by the poison and died on the spot. Yun Zhongqi immediately frowned and said with a face full of anger, "Damn it. She actually took poison and killed herself." Ji Tianqing glanced at Yun Luo's body and said with a serious face, "This person is indeed the other party's death warrior. She would rather kill herself than reveal any information." However, uncle, don't worry. Yun Luo has other accomplices. If there are no accidents, Dr. Bailey has already caught that guy. Even if that guy wanted to kill himself, it would be impossible. If he fell into the hands of Dr. Bailey, it would be difficult for him to die even if he wanted to. Yun Zhongqi nodded and his expression softened. He remembered that when Yun Luo attacked him, she had used the black ancient bell. He released his spiritual sense and searched around the palace. After a while, he found the soul-reaping bell on the roof. Without the support of true core, it had turned back into a black bell. With a thought, Yun Zhongqi used his invisible divine soul power to wrap around the black bell and fly into the room. Swoosh! He reached out and grabbed the black bell. He held it in his palm and carefully observed it. He quickly discovered the secret of the soul-reaping bell, and his expression changed. What a sinister magic treasure! It's actually specialized in restraining the spiritual power. Fortunately, I was prepared. If this magic treasure had succeeded in its sneak attack, my spiritual power would have been severely injured and my strength would have dropped greatly. Ji Tianqing frowned as a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "Humph. The other party is really willing to go all out. Their methods are truly vicious." At this moment, a guard captain came to the door and reported respectfully, reporting to Patriarch, "Divine Dr. Bailey and Mistress have arrived at the Great Assembly Hall and are waiting for you." Yun Zhongqi put away the soul-reaping bell and ordered in a dignified voice, "Pass down my orders. Gather all the elders and managers in the meeting hall for a discussion. I have important news to announce." Understood. The guard captain bowed and saluted. Then, he quickly turned around and left to pass down the order. Yun Zhongqi then looked at Ji Tianqing with a kind smile on his face. "After a whole day of trouble and causing such a huge commotion, I can finally reveal the truth and clear your name." Ji Tianqing also revealed a relieved smile and nodded. Fortunately, it was resolved smoothly today. It won't affect tomorrow's birthday. After saying that, the two of them walked out of the room and went downstairs to the Great Assembly Hall. However, the scene of Yun Zhongqi carrying Yun Luo's corpse was a bit strange and horrifying. More than 10 people had already gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. Bailey Ningsu, Yun Yao, and Divine Dr. Bailey had all arrived. There were also a few elders and managers of the Yun family, as well as 2 guard captains. In addition, there was a middle-aged servant wearing gray linen clothes kneeling in the Great Assembly Hall. This person's entire body was covered in blood. His body was motionless as he knelt on the ground like a statue. He was Yun Luo's accomplice, the guy who was sweeping the garden. When he passed the jade slip and the soul-reaping bell to Yun Luo, he thought it was flawless. However, he didn't think that Divine Dr. Bailey would be hiding in the dark and see everything. After he separated from Yun Luo, Divine Dr. Bailey suddenly appeared and grabbed him. Although he struggled with all his might to escape, he couldn't escape from Divine Dr. Bailey's grasp. Even if he took poison to commit suicide, it was useless. Divine Dr. Bailey instantly used his power to force out the poison and saved him. Furthermore, Divine Dr. Bailey had crippled his cultivation and sealed his acupoints. He could only kneel on the ground like a stone statue. He couldn't even bite his tongue to commit suicide. All the elders, managers, and captains looked at the middle-aged servant with a puzzled expression. They didn't understand what was going on. Only Divine Dr. Bailey, Bailey Ningsu, and Yun Yao knew the real reason and process of this matter. At this time, Yun Zhongqi carried Yun Luo's corpse and brought Ji Tianqing into the Great Assembly Hall. When everyone saw Ji Tianqing appear, they were shocked and puzzled. Ji Tianqing? Didn't he hide? He actually dares to appear? Quickly catch him. No. Why is he with the Patriarch? Didn't Ji Tianqing assassinate the matriarch and injure the Patriarch? Why is the Patriarch safe and sound? What is going on? I'm confused. Although the elders, managers, and captains didn't understand what was going on, they all knew. However, everyone realized that there must be more to this matter than meets the eye. Everyone was puzzled and looked at Yun Zhongqi expectantly. They were waiting for him to reveal the truth. Yun Zhongqi walked into the great assembly hall and threw Yun Luo's corpse beside the middle-aged servant. When Bailey Ningsu saw that Yun Luo was dead and his face was covered in blood, she sighed with mixed feelings. It's really her. Sigh. Just a moment ago, Yun Yao rushed to the Thousand Cloud Palace and told her everything. She told her that the murderer was Yun Luo. Naturally, she didn't believe it. Even if Yun Yao's words were reasonable, she couldn't accept this result. Until now, when she saw Yun Zhongqi carrying Yun Luo's corpse, she had no choice but to believe it. Yun Zhongqi walked to the throne in the great assembly hall and sat down. His body emitted a powerful aura as he glanced at everyone. Everyone quieted down and looked at him with burning eyes, waiting for him to announce the result. Ji Tianqing walked to Yun Yao's side. When he saw Yun Yao's questioning look, he nodded slightly, indicating that everything had gone smoothly for Yun Yao. At this time, Yun Zhongqi said in a loud and dignified voice, "Everyone, a lot of things happened last night. The palace is in chaos and everyone is in a state of panic. Everyone thought that Ji Tianqing assassinated the matriarch and was locked in the underground ice prison by me. I wanted to order him to be executed, so he took the opportunity to sneak an attack on me. He severely injured me and escaped from the ice prison. But that's not the truth. Ji Tianqing was wrongly accused. This was a conspiracy by the Duanmu family and the Murong family against our Cloud Spirit Palace. After working together with Ji Tianqing, we finally found the truth and found the murderer." Chapter 760. Yun Zhongqi solemnly announced the result. After listening to his explanation, the crowd finally understood the cause and process of the matter. Everyone revealed a look of sudden realization and let out a burst of exclamations of anger, hatred, and admiration. I never thought that the truth would be like this. The Duanmu family and the Murong family are too despicable. They actually planted a spy in our Cloud Spirit Palace more than 10 years in advance. They are simply vicious. That damned Yun Luo, to think that our Yun family trusted her so much. She was actually the most hidden spy. You may know a person for a long time, but not their heart. Young Master Ji's intelligence is truly amazing. If it was anyone else who was framed by Yun Luo like this, they would be helpless and unable to defend themselves. That's right. No wonder young Miss is so devoted to young Master Ji. Young Master Ji is so talented and intelligent. He and young Miss are truly a match made in heaven. Last night, such a huge disturbance caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Fortunately, young Master Ji turned the tide and quickly resolved this disturbance. It won't affect tomorrow's birthday banquet. Our Yun family has a son-in-law like young Master Ji. Why should we worry about not being able to resist the Duanmu and Murong family's villains? The Yun family's elders, managers, and commanders were all enthusiastically discussing and exclaiming. While they hated the Duanmu and Murong family, they also admired Ji Tianqing's shrewdness and intelligence. In the eyes of the crowd, Ji Tianqing was condemned by everyone last night. The evidence was conclusive and there was almost no chance for him to clear his name. If it was anyone else in that situation, it would be impossible for them to prove their innocence, let alone find the real culprit. But Ji Tianqing did it. Moreover, he only used a short night to resolve this disturbance and successfully find the real culprit. Such an outstanding performance caused everyone present to exclaim in admiration. It would even be passed down as a legend that would spread throughout the Yun family. Even Bailey Ningsu had a whole new level of respect for Ji Tianqing, greatly favoring him. While everyone was discussing and exclaiming, she also turned her head to look at Ji Tianqing beside her. Her eyes were gentle and her tone was apologetic as she said, "Tianqing, I've wronged you last night. Auntie has not been deceived by the scoundrel and has always believed that you are innocent. It is only to find out the real culprit that I put you in." Without waiting for her to finish, Tianqing smiled and nodded, "Auntie, you don't need to say more. Tianqing understands. You and Uncle Yun are the head and mistress of the family. You have a high position and are wise and far-sighted, so of course you can see things clearly. How could Duanmu and the Murong family's crafty schemes deceive you?" Hearing him say this, Bailey Ning Su's gaze became even gentler, her impression of him becoming even better. Yunyao held Tianqing's arm and pulled Bailey Ningsu's wrist, smiling, "Tianqing, mother, we're going to be a family soon. What's the point of saying such polite words? It's because we trust each other and work together as a family that we can quickly resolve the scoundrel's crafty schemes. As long as our hearts work together, even if Duanmu and the Murong family have more crafty schemes, we won't be afraid." It's exactly like that. Bailey Ningsu quickly nodded, revealing a gratified expression. Tianqing also smiled and nodded, tightly holding Yunyao's slender hand. Their fingers intertwined, their hearts and minds connected. He sighed with emotion in his heart. Only after experiencing the trials of wind and rain can one see true feelings. After last night's disturbance, not only did I not become enemies with the Yun family, we even became closer. Yao Yao's mother approved of me and we're even more like a family now. I wonder how Duanmu and the Murong family will feel when they hear this news. Following this, Yun Zhongqi interrogated the middle-aged servant in front of everyone. The middle-aged servant's cultivation had been crippled and he had become an ordinary person without the strength to truss a chicken. He had fallen into the hands of so many strong people and was in a situation where he could neither beg for life nor die. Even if he had a strong will, he wouldn't say anything even if he had to die. However, Miracle Dr. Bailey personally made him suffer, torturing him until he hovered between life and death, enduring unimaginable pain and suffering. In the end, the middle-aged servant was tortured to the point where he didn't even look human anymore and his will completely collapsed. He finally confessed the truth, only asking for a quick and painless death. I was originally an elite of the soul-hurting hall that the Duanmu family raised. I entered Cloud Soul Palace 9 years ago and disguised myself as a spy. The Duanmu family head gave a secret order to have Luo assassinate Bailey Ningsu and frame Tianqing for the sake of breaking the relationship between Tianqing and the Yun family. This morning, the Duanmu family head found out that Cloud Soul Palace was in chaos and ordered me to give the soul reaping bell to Luo so that he could assassinate Yun Zhongqi. The middle-aged servant intermittently confessed the truth and told everyone about Duanmu Huang's plan. Finally, everyone understood the whole story. After he finished, Yun Zhongqi fulfilled his wish and gave him a quick and painless death. This matter was finally over and the disturbance from last night was finally settled. Yun Zhongqi had the guards take the middle-aged servant and Yun Luo's corpse away. He then announced in a dignified voice, "Tomorrow is Miracle Dr. Bailey's 300th birthday. Now that the disturbance has settled, everyone should quickly clean up the mess and prepare for tomorrow's birthday banquet." He gave a series of orders and assigned tasks to all the elders, managers, and commanders. After the meeting was over, everyone left the meeting hall and went to carry out their respective tasks. Everyone spread the news and it quickly spread throughout Cloud Soul Palace. Everyone in the Yun family knew the truth of the matter. Originally, everyone in Cloud Soul Palace was in a state of panic. Tens of thousands of people were discussing the matter and rumors were spreading everywhere. After everyone learned the truth, they all calmed down. Then, they erupted into even more heated discussions and exclamations. The entire Yun family had a clearer understanding of Tianqing's shrewdness and wisdom. They respected and worshipped him even more. Soon, everyone in the Yun family began to get busy. Many guests from Central State had arrived at Cloud Soul Palace early. The first elder led the disciples of the Yun family in charge of welcoming and greeting the guests and arranging accommodations for them. The second elder was in charge of cleaning up the mess. He led a large group of guards and craftsmen to rebuild the buildings and repair the damaged underground ice prison. The third elder and fourth elder were in charge of preparing for the birthday banquet. The commanders of the guards were in charge of maintaining the peace of Cloud Soul Palace. In short, everything returned to normal and Cloud Soul Palace became lively again. Yunyao and Ji Tianqing chatted for a while before going to Thousand Cloud Palace to accompany Bailey Ningsu. Ji Tianqing returned to Hefeng Garden by himself. The little black dragon and Xian Yu had been waiting in Hefeng Garden for news. They had been waiting anxiously for a long time and were filled with worry. Seeing him return safely, the little black dragon and Xian Yu felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They excitedly came up to him and asked about what had happened. Ji Tianqing brought the two of them back to his room. He sat down and drank tea as he recounted what had happened. Last night's events had been filled with twists and turns. The little black dragon and Xian Yu were excited and intoxicated as they listened. The night quickly passed and a new day arrived. Chapter 761. Since early morning, many guests had arrived at Cloud Spirit Palace. These guests were dressed luxuriously and had extraordinary bearings. They were the leaders and experts of the various forces in Central State. Everyone entered Cloud Spirit Palace in an endless stream, bringing rich gifts with them. The great elder of Cloud Spirit Palace and many disciples of the Yun family welcomed the guests warmly at the entrance of Cloud Spirit Palace and settled the guests down. After the guests entered Cloud Spirit Palace, some of them rested in the guest rooms while others strolled around the palace and enjoyed the scenery. Most of them gathered in groups of 3 to 5. They either talked loudly or secretly about important matters. All the major forces had received the news in advance. Cloud Spirit Palace was holding a birthday banquet for Miracle Dr. Bailey to use this opportunity to rally the heroes and participate in this grand event. Many of the forces had enmity with the Duanmu family or had animosity and conflicts. They were not qualified to go against the Duanmu family and could only swallow their anger. Now that Cloud Spirit Palace had stood out and wanted to have an open battle with the Duanmu family, of course they would use this opportunity to take revenge and beat the Duanmu family while they were down. There were also many forces that had no enmity or relationship with the Duanmu family. They just wanted to use this opportunity to gain support from Cloud Spirit Palace and gain more benefits. In short, most of the forces and experts who came to Cloud Spirit Palace for the birthday banquet were on Cloud Spirit Palace's side. Many of the forces were full of anticipation for the big event that Cloud Spirit Palace was about to announce. Of course, among the guests, there were some people with evil intentions who were secretly observing the situation and movements in Cloud Spirit Palace. These people were spies from the Murong family and the Duanmu family. They had deliberately disguised their identities and sneaked in to gather information. As long as they did not cause trouble, it would be difficult for people to detect them. In addition, there were many young talents in Cloud Spirit Palace. They gathered in groups of 3 to 5 and discussed another matter. Most of these young martial artists were handsome and elegant. They were all genius disciples from various big families and forces. As early as half a month ago, they had already received the news that Miracle Dr. Bailey had returned to the central region and would no longer travel the world. Miracle Dr. Bailey felt that he was old and wanted to use this opportunity to pick a young talent to be his last disciple and teach him the medical skills that he had spent his life practicing. Everyone in the world knew that Miracle Dr. Bailey was the top miracle doctor in the continent. His medical skills were unparalleled in the world, and he had the miraculous ability to bring the dead back to life. If one could obtain the inheritance of divine Dr. Bailey's medical skills, it would be a supreme glory that would make everyone in the world jealous. Even if he could only learn 30% to 50% of his skills, he would definitely be praised as a divine doctor. Moreover, if anyone could become Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple, not only would they have the support of a peerless miracle doctor, they would also have the backing of Cloud Spirit Palace. There were also many honors and substantial benefits that could last for 3 days and 3 nights. In short, if he could acknowledge Divine Dr. Bailey as his master, that would be a heaven-sent opportunity to reach the heavens in a single bound. The young geniuses of the various powers of the Central Plains were all filled with excitement when they heard the news. Today, 80% of the young talents who came to Cloud Spirit Palace to celebrate the birthday had brought an extremely generous gift for apprenticeship. They were prepared to present it to Miracle Dr. Bailey, hoping to gain Miracle Dr. Bailey's appreciation and favor. As time passed, more and more guests arrived at Cloud Spirit Palace. The palace became more and more lively. Ji Tianqing had been meditating and cultivating in Hefeng Garden. He paid no attention to the outside world and focused on cultivating the pure heart demon suppression art. He was now at the 6th level of the Sky Origin stage. His cultivation base was stable and his martial arts were profound. He was not far from the 7th level of the Sky Origin stage. He had already cultivated the ultimate sword body. Next, he needed to cultivate the 9th level of the Sword Heart Tao. Once he successfully condensed the Sword Heart, he would have completed the cultivation of the Sword Heart Tao. However, the 9th level of the Sword Heart Tao was the most difficult secret skill to cultivate. He needed to merge the sword embryo and the heart and then refine it into the sword heart. How difficult and inconceivable was this? Ji Tianqing estimated that he would need at least 3 to 4 years of hard work to truly cultivate the Sword Heart Tao and condense the sword heart. Such an extremely fast cultivation speed was already shocking. He could be called a peerless genius. However, he was not satisfied. He still felt that this cultivation speed was too slow. Ever since he started cultivating the pure heart demon suppression art, he accidentally discovered that this art could refine the heart. It was extremely powerful and helpful for him to condense the sword heart. Therefore, he had been cultivating the pure heart demon suppression art. He wanted to condense the sword heart Tao as soon as possible. Unknowingly, a day passed quickly. It was evening. Under the golden light of the setting sun, Cloud Spirit Palace shone with golden light. It was magnificent and exuded a sacred and solemn aura. The banquet was about to begin. The main hall of Cloud Spirit Palace had been properly decorated. It was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. It was a joyous scene. In the square in front of the hall, which could accommodate thousands of people, there were over 100 tables. There were all kinds of spiritual fruits, pastries, and fine wines on the tables. Countless distinguished guests rushed to the square in front of the hall to wait for the banquet to begin. Everyone in the Yun clan was ready. They only needed to wait for the clan leader's order to start the banquet. Ji Tianqing also finished his cultivation. He left Hefeng Garden and rushed to the main hall of Cloud Spirit Palace. When he arrived at the square in front of the hall, he saw that there were over 2,000 people gathered in the huge square. Other than the guards of Cloud Spirit Palace standing around and over 100 maids of the Yun clan, there were over 2,000 guests in the square. These guests were all leaders, and young talents of the major forces in the Central Plains. They were all influential figures in the Central Plains, and were all famous heroes. Ji Tianqing's eyes swept across the square. With just a few glances, he could tell that the guests were from over 100 wealthy clans and forces. Cloud Spirit Palace is indeed worthy of being one of the 3 great thousand ancient families. It has such great prestige and appeal. It seems that at least half of the first-rate wealthy clans in the Central Plains are here. While Ji Tianqing was pondering silently, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his ears. "Hey, Tianqing, why are you here?" It was the voice of a young man. There was a hint of surprise in his tone. Ji Tianqing subconsciously turned his head to look. He saw a young martial artist in a green robe. He had a dignified appearance and was looking at him with a smile. He immediately recognized that this person was Ling Yishui. "Senior brother Ling, you're here too." Ji Tianqing nodded at him and greeted him. Ling Yishui quickly came in front of him and said with a smile, "Cloud Spirit Palace is holding a birthday banquet. Miracle Dr. Bailey is celebrating his 300th birthday. How can I miss it? Of course, I'm here to ask for a cup of wine." He was the crown prince of the monarch mansion. He was the top genius of the human race. Of course, he was qualified to attend this birthday banquet. Cloud Spirit Palace would even treat him as an honored guest. Ji Tianqing was just a little confused. He asked, "Senior brother Ling, why are you staying in the square? Why don't you go to the hall and sit?" Ling Yishui waved his hand and said with a smile, "Those sitting in the hall are the leaders of the various forces. They are all senior experts who want to discuss important matters with Patriarch Yun. I'm just here to join in the fun. I just want to stay in the square and have a chat with the crown princes of the same generation." Hearing him say that, Ji Tianqing saw that there were indeed 3 young talents 5 steps behind him. The 3 of them were all crown princes of the human race. Ji Tianqing had seen them a few times. He was not unfamiliar with them. 2 of them had even participated in the fight for the title of Heavenly Stellar Territory Lord. They were Lu Ziyuan and Yi Yifan. Noticing Ji Tianqing's gaze on them, the 3 of them hastily walked over and cupped their fists towards Ji Tianqing. "Greetings, Senior Brother Ji. Senior Brother Ji is even more elegant than before." The strength, status, and reputation of the 3 of them were not much different from Ling Yishui. However, compared to Ji Tianqing, they were far behind. Their attitude towards Ji Tianqing was somewhat respectful. When they spoke, they had smiles on their faces. Their tone revealed a sense of closeness. Chapter 762. Ji Tianqing exchanged some pleasantries with Ling Yichen and the others before he prepared to leave. However, the 3 princes stopped Ji Tianqing with a smile. "Prince Tianqing, please wait. Senior brother Ji, we have a presumptuous request. We hope you can help us with it." As they spoke, the 3 princes looked at Ling Yichen and signaled him with their eyes. Ling Yichen was a little embarrassed. He revealed a hesitant look as if he wanted to say something but stopped himself. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing realized that the 4 of them must have something to ask. He looked at Ling Yichen and asked calmly, "Senior brother Ling, what's the matter?" Ling Yichen looked around. Seeing that there was no one else, he lowered his voice and said, "Junior brother Ji, we came to Cloud Soul Palace with a purpose. We heard that Miracle Dr. Bailey is going to choose a last disciple at the birthday banquet to teach his lifelong medical skills, so we want to ask for your help." Ji Tianqing suddenly understood. Although Ling Yichen, Yi Yifan, and the other 3 were the princes of the imperial residence, they were the top prodigies of the human race. However, the imperial residence only taught martial cultivation. They would not specifically teach alchemy, formation, or weapon refinement. In the imperial residence's motto, only martial cultivation was the right path. The other alchemy, formations, talismans, and weapons were all unorthodox. Even the god masters of the imperial residence would often warn the princes not to put their thoughts on unorthodox methods, which would affect their martial cultivation. Therefore, if the princes wanted to cultivate the profound unorthodox methods, they could only think of their own ways. Although the princes' identities were honorable, Miracle Dr. Bailey's medical skills were unparalleled in the continent. If they could become Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple, it would be a great honor for the princes. Ji Tianqing pointed at the countless young talents in the square and said to Ling Yichen, "Senior brother Ling, you're not the only one who wants to be Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple. I'm afraid all the young talents here today have the same idea. You can just tell Patriarch Yun or Miracle Dr. Bailey your wishes. What's the use of looking for me? With your status as princes, you will definitely have a better chance than those young geniuses. Ling Yichen gently shook his head and revealed a bitter smile. Junior Marshal Brother Ji, we know that you have a close relationship with Yunyao. That miracle Dr. Bailey is Yunyao's grandfather, so he shouldn't be a stranger to you. We just want to inquire about it. Do you know if Divine Dr. Bailey has any specific requirements for accepting a disciple? Did he ever reveal anything about it? Ji Tianqing finally understood that the four of them wanted to gather information and make preparations in advance. He shook his head and said with a calm expression, I'm not familiar with Divine Dr. Bailey. I've only met him twice. How would I know any news? Divine Dr. Bailey never mentioned this matter, and I even offended him because of a misunderstanding, so how can I ask about this matter? Ling Yijue and the three martial monarchs' sons immediately wore disappointed looks. If that's the case, then I'll have to thank Junior Brother Ji. Ling Yi cupped his hands in salute and did not stop him anymore. After Ji Tianqing left, the three martial monarchs gathered around Ling Yijue and discussed in low voices. I didn't expect Ji Tianqing to not be familiar with Divine Dr. Bailey. What should we do? What requirements does Divine Dr. Bailey have? We're completely in the dark. We don't have any advantage at all. You can't say that. I think our chances are even greater now. Hearing Lu Ziyuan's words, everyone looked at him with puzzled eyes. Lu Ziyuan hurriedly explained, we all know that Ji Tianqing has a close relationship with Yunyao. He's also the number one genius of the human race, and his name is known throughout the central state. I was worried just now that his talent and reputation far surpasses ours, and he has the highest chance of becoming Divine Dr. Bailey's disciple. I didn't expect that he's not familiar with Divine Dr. Bailey and has even offended him. In this case, his chances are very slim. Our strongest competitor is gone, so of course our chances are greater. Everyone nodded in agreement when they heard that, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Only Ling Yijue remained silent, thinking silently in his heart, Ji Tianqing has created miracles again and again. Who knows how good his relationship with Cloud Soul Palace is? If he becomes Divine Dr. Bailey's disciple, his name will definitely spread throughout the central state, and he'll become an influential figure, and be targeted by various forces. As soon as Ji Tianqing left Ling Yijue and the others, he was recognized by the guests in the square. Hey, isn't that Ji Tianqing? He's here too? Could it be that he's also here for Divine Dr. Bailey's disciple? There was a rumor in the central state before that Ji Tianqing seems to have a close relationship with Yunyao. If he wants to be Divine Dr. Bailey's disciple, his chances must be very high, right? This guy's name is already known throughout the central state. He's so dazzling. Is he going to snatch this opportunity from us? For a moment, many guests' eyes were gathered on Ji Tianqing, and the crowd began to whisper and discuss. Those confident and high-spirited young talents and disciples of aristocratic families suddenly felt a great sense of danger and pressure, and they were all on their guard against Ji Tianqing. The leaders and leaders of the various forces were also carefully sizing him up, and secretly communicating with each other through voice transmission. So he's Ji Tianqing? It's true that hearing about him is not as good as meeting him in person, and meeting him in person is even more impressive. The number one genius of the human race, the genius imperial prince, the Tianshan region lord. With such dazzling glory and light on him, it's enough to crush the young people of his generation. Is he the one who destroyed the Duanmu family's herb garden alone, and caused the Duanmu family's vitality to be greatly damaged? I've only heard of his legends before, but I've finally seen him in person today. He's indeed extraordinary and in high spirits. The young talents of his generation were both envious and jealous of him. The leaders and powerhouses of the older generation were also very wary of him, and did not dare to underestimate him. Ji Tianqing did not say or do anything. He just calmly walked across the square, and naturally became the focus of the crowd. It was not until he left the square and walked into the main hall that the crowd withdrew their gazes, and began to whisper to each other. Now, he had become one of the most distinguished figures in the central state in just a year, and he was so dazzling that people could only look up to him. At this moment, at the entrance of the square, a guard commander announced loudly, "The Emperor of the Imperial Court has arrived at the Cloud Spirit Palace with his heavenly concubine to congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey on his birthday." The loud voice spread throughout the square, and more than 2,000 people turned around to look at the entrance of the square. Many powerhouses and leaders in the main hall also stood up and looked at the end of the square. The great elder of the Yun family also brought a few deacons out of the main hall, and came to the square to welcome them personally. On the wide road at the entrance of the square, there was a dignified and graceful young man and woman. They were surrounded by guards, and they walked over in a dignified manner. On the left was a young man in a golden dragon robe. He had a dignified appearance, and he was extraordinarily handsome. He was the son of heaven, Long Yunxiao. Beside him was a beautiful woman in a phoenix robe. Her appearance was extremely beautiful, and her temperament was graceful and elegant. She was the heavenly concubine, Unsoan. Chapter 763. At this moment, everyone's gaze was focused on Long Yunxiao and Unsoan. Long Yunxiao was handsome and extraordinary, while Unsoan was beautiful and dignified. In everyone's eyes, they were a perfect match. Only a very small number of people, including Ji Tianqing, knew that this couple was just a couple in name. However, when Ji Tianqing saw Long Yunxiao and Unsoan walk side by side through the plaza, he was still a little surprised. Up until now, this should be the first time Long Yunxiao has brought Unsoan out in public, right? Although Long Yunxiao might not have any feelings for Unsoan. But he was willing to bring Unsoan to the birthday celebration, and was willing to let Unsoan hold his arm. This was a big step forward. I'm sure Unsoan's mood right now must be very happy, right? Perhaps Unsoan has already learned how to capture Long Yunxiao's heart? This is a good start. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and the corners of his mouth curled into a smile. He felt gratified that Long Yunxiao and Unsoan's relationship had warmed up. Soon, Long Yunxiao and Unsoan arrived at the entrance of the main hall under the respectful welcome of the Yun family's head elder and the greetings of the crowd. Before they even stepped through the door, Long Yunxiao and Unsoan saw Ji Tianqing. The husband and wife looked at him at the same time, and walked in front of him with tacit understanding. They nodded and greeted him. "Ji Tianqing, I trust you've been well since we last met." Long Yunxiao looked at him with a calm expression, and a smile hung on his lips as he greeted him. "Greetings, son of heaven, heavenly consort." Ji Tianqing cupped his hands and greeted them, and exchanged a few pleasantries. After he finished chatting with Long Yunxiao, Unsoan said with a smile, "Prince Tianqing, why don't you sit with us? We're all familiar with each other, and we can chat happily." Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and looked at Long Yunxiao. Seeing that Long Yunxiao's expression didn't change, he smiled and said, "Since Heavenly Consort has invited me, I'll accept." Thus, the three of them walked side by side to the table on the left side of the hall and sat down. In the main hall, to the north was the main seat. Only Yun Zhongqi, his wife, and the birthday boy, Miracle Dr. Bailey, were allowed to sit there. As for the distinguished guests, they sat on the left and right sides of the main hall. Among them, the seat of honor on the left was the most honorable. It was a seat reserved for VIPs, and only Long Yunxiao and Unsoan were allowed to sit there. However, there was one more person now, Ji Tianqing. However, none of the guests in the hall felt that it was inappropriate. They all thought that it was only right and proper. After Ji Tianqing and Long Yunxiao took their seats, most of the VIPs had arrived. The guard commander at the entrance of the main hall announced loudly, "The birthday star, Miracle Dr. Bailey, has arrived." Master and Mistress have arrived." Along with a majestic and vigorous voice, Divine Dr. Bailey appeared with Yun Zhongqi and his wife in white robes fluttering in the wind. They strode into the main hall. Immediately, everyone in the main hall hurriedly stood up and bowed to Divine Dr. Bailey to congratulate him. Miracle Dr. Bailey's face was glowing. He walked through the main hall with a smile on his face and cupped his fists to thank the guests on both sides. Not long after, Miracle Dr. Bailey, Yun Zhongqi, and his wife took their seats at the main seat. Miracle Dr. Bailey cupped his fists and bowed to the guests. His voice was loud and clear as he thanked the guests and welcomed them to Cloud Spirit Palace. After he finished speaking, Yun Zhongqi announced that the birthday banquet had officially begun. Along with the sound of gongs and drums, groups of young and beautiful maids walked out like flowing water. They brought out many delicious dishes and nectar. There were also many charming dancers and musicians who played beautiful music and performed beautiful dances. In the main hall and the square in front of the main hall, more than 2,000 guests drank to their heart's content to celebrate Miracle Dr. Bailey's 300th birthday. Following that, the distinguished guests in the main hall took advantage of the lively and joyous atmosphere to offer their congratulations to Miracle Dr. Bailey. A burly middle-aged expert stood up first and bowed to Miracle Dr. Bailey. He said in a loud voice, "Miracle Dr. Bailey, I am Li Hao, the president of the Middle State Hero Union. I have heard of Miracle Dr. Bailey's name since I was young. Today, I have specially come to Cloud Spirit Palace to celebrate your birthday. I wish Miracle Dr. Bailey a long life and good fortune." After he finished speaking, he raised his wine cup and drank the wine in it in one gulp. Immediately, four experts from the Heroes' Assembly carried 2 luxurious chests into the main hall and presented the treasures as congratulatory gifts. The 4 experts put down the big boxes and opened them in front of everyone. They saw that the 2 big boxes were filled with dazzling upper spiritual stones, various pearls and gems, as well as fine gold and jade. They bloomed with dazzling brilliance. The 2 big boxes of treasures were really expensive. They were generous and generous. Many of the guests were amazed. Li Hao's expression did not change, but he was secretly pleased with himself. After all, he was the first to present a generous gift. Although it did not enter Miracle Dr. Bailey's eyes, it would leave a deep impression on the Yun family. He would definitely be recognized by Cloud Spirit Palace. Sure enough, Miracle Dr. Bailey's expression did not change. He smiled and nodded his head in thanks. Yun Zhongqi looked deeply at Li Hao before ordering the housekeeper beside him to put away the 2 boxes of treasures. Li Hao of the Hero Union was the first to present his treasures and received Yun Zhongqi's recognition. This made the other powerful people envious and restless. City Lord of Tomorrow Night City, Qin He, congratulates Miracle Dr. Bailey on his 300th birthday. I hereby present my humble gift. 2 guards carried the simple and unadorned boxes into the main hall. They opened the boxes in front of everyone and presented the treasures to Miracle Dr. Bailey. Inside the boxes, there was a piece of 10,000-year cold jade and a piece of 10,000-year fire jade. Such a peerless jade was a top-notch treasure material. It was rare and difficult to find. Its attributes were ice and fire, which made people click their tongues in wonder. A Grandmaster blacksmith could use these 2 pieces of jade to refine a soul-grade Dharma treasure. It would definitely have great effects. Miracle Dr. Bailey could use these 2 pieces of jade to display his medical skills and treat people. It would also be of great help and increase his strength. These gifts could not be considered priceless, but they catered to Miracle Dr. Bailey's preferences. Miracle Dr. Bailey's face was full of smiles as he hurriedly nodded his head in thanks. Yun Zhongqi also remembered the City Lord of Tomorrow Night City and had a whole new level of respect for him. Next, the various powerful people and leaders of the various forces all stood up to congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey on his birthday. They presented the gifts that they had prepared beforehand. These forces were either rich and powerful families that had been passed down for hundreds of years, or they were ancient sects, or they were the lords of mighty cities. The gifts that they presented were either extravagant to the point of causing people to exclaim in admiration, or they were strange to the point that they catered to Miracle Dr. Bailey's preferences. In short, everyone had put in a lot of effort to prepare their gifts. Ji Tianqing could see that the reason why the various forces were willing to spend so much money to present their gifts was not only to congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey on his birthday, but also to express their stance to Cloud Spirit Palace, hoping to gain Cloud Spirit Palace's recognition. After all, Cloud Spirit Palace was going to announce something big tonight and summon all the heroes to participate in the grand occasion. Chapter 764. Soon, an hour had passed. Sitting in the hall were over 60 patriarchs, city lords, sect masters, and leaders. All of them presented their congratulatory gifts to Miracle Dr. Bailey. Most of them had come to cooperate with Cloud Spirit Palace. Their gifts were extremely precious, and there was no lack of rare and precious treasures. Ji Tianqing had also seen many precious treasures, which had widened his horizons. At the same time, he had a deeper understanding of the power and prestige of Cloud Spirit Palace in Zhongzhou. It was really terrifying. Following that, many young talents in the square also entered the hall to congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey and present their congratulatory gifts. Although these young talents' gifts were not as extravagant as those of the big forces, they were still very valuable. They had put in a lot of effort into it. There were all kinds of gifts, including spiritual stones, elixirs, charms, and all kinds of materials. There were also antiques and precious treasures. Although these young talents did not state their intentions clearly, everyone could see that they were using the birthday as an opportunity to be apprenticed to Miracle Dr. Bailey. Everyone wanted to show off in front of Miracle Dr. Bailey and leave a good impression on him. Even the imperial princes of the imperial mansion were no exception. They had all spent a lot of money and took out precious treasures as gifts. Miracle Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi thanked everyone for their gifts. Everyone entered and left the hall in an endless stream, which made the atmosphere very lively and festive. On the right side of the hall, Zhu Fifan sat at the table expressionlessly and looked at everyone calmly. Although he did not show it on his face, he sneered in his heart. A group of guys who do not know the immensity of heaven and earth. How dare they dream of becoming my grandfather's last disciple and inheriting the medical skills? Humph. Do you think you can get what you want by presenting generous gifts? I can guarantee that after tonight, my grandfather won't even remember your names. My grandfather's medical skills must be mine. Finally, over 60 young geniuses had presented their congratulatory gifts. No one went forward to present their gifts in public. Many people looked at the left side of the hall. It was the emperors, the heavenly concubines and Ji Tianqing's turn to congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey. Many experts in the hall focused their gazes on the three of them, looking forward to what would happen next. Even on the square outside the hall, many young geniuses stuck their heads out to look into the hall, and they wanted to see what treasures the three of them were going to offer. After all, the emperor and the heavenly concubine represented the imperial court. Ji Tianqing was also the #1 genius of the human clan in the Central Plains, the realm lord of Tianshan. Their gifts should have exceeded everyone else's. However, Ji Tianqing obviously didn't realize this. He was looking around, his eyes sweeping the hall twice, looking for Yunyao's figure everywhere. Unfortunately, he couldn't find Yunyao anywhere in the hall. Strange, tonight is Miracle Dr. Bailey's birthday banquet, why didn't Yao Yao come? Where did she go? Could he have been delayed by something? Just as he was worrying, Long Yunshao and Ensuwen stood up. Under everyone's gaze, the two of them cupped their hands and congratulated Miracle Dr. Bailey. I, together with the heavenly concubine, congratulate Miracle Dr. Bailey on his birthday. May the miracle doctor live forever. After the greeting, Long Yunxiao took out a treasure box from his interspatial ring. Divine Dr. Bailey, today is your 300th birthday. This monarch has already prepared a congratulatory gift a month ago. This is a core crystal from the fiery mountain in the southern wasteland. 600 years ago, a powerful soul-refining stage cultivator risked his life and found this crystal in the sea of lava thousands of miles deep underground. As he spoke, Long Yunxiao opened the box, and a walnut-sized fiery red crystal core appeared. When the box was opened, the crystal core emitted a dazzling red light, illuminating the entire hall. The power of the flame emitted by the crystal core was terrifying. It instantly doubled the temperature of the hall. Although everyone present was a martial Dao expert, they still felt their bodies burning. Even their blood and true essence flowed faster. Everyone stared at the earth core crystal core with wide eyes, and their eyes were filled with shock. Oh my God! It's an earth fire crystal core. Such a treasure comes from the depths of the earth. Only a spirit refinement realm expert can find it. Such a treasure is simply priceless. Even an ordinary Tongxian realm martial artist could become a Sky Origin realm martial artist if he could make good use of this crystal core. This is a priceless treasure. I didn't expect the Son of Heaven to be so generous. This treasure is comparable to a spirit-level magic treasure. All the experts and leaders in the hall, as well as the young talents outside the hall, were shocked by the earth core crystal core. Even miracle Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi's eyes flashed. They didn't expect Long Yunxiao to present such a precious treasure in front of everyone. Long Yunxiao continued, I know that your medical skills are unparalleled in the world, and your alchemy skills are unparalleled in the world. If this earth core crystal core is integrated into your alchemy furnace, it will provide you with an endless supply of alchemy fire. It will make your alchemy twice the result with half the effort. Of course, with your peerless alchemy skills, this earth core crystal core is just icing on the cake. Miracle Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi quickly stood up and bowed to Long Yunxiao and Ensuan to express their gratitude. Miracle Dr. Bailey smiled kindly and said, The Son of Heaven has brought the heavenly concubine to Cloud Spirit Palace to celebrate my birthday. It has brought light to Cloud Spirit Palace and made me feel grateful. But the Son of Heaven has given me such a precious treasure. How can I accept it? As the saying goes, one should not accept a reward without any effort. I ask the Son of Heaven to accept such a great gift. Long Yunxiao smiled and said, Miracle Dr. Bailey, this is a token of my sincerity. Please accept it. Moreover, I have been studying alchemy for the past few years. There are many things that are difficult to understand. I have always wanted to ask you for advice, but I never had the chance. Hearing Long Yunxiao's words, everyone's expression changed slightly. Even Bailey Yi's eyes flashed with a hint of astonishment. Everyone understood that Long Yunxiao wanted to be Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple and learn his alchemy skills. The leaders of the major forces had complicated expressions. The young talents outside the main hall also showed anxiety and jealousy. They cursed in their hearts. Long Yunxiao, as the Son of Heaven, actually wants to be Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple? It's over. We have calculated everything, but we missed the Son of Heaven. Damn it! He is the Son of Heaven of the Imperial Court. He has a good relationship with Cloud Spirit Palace. Now he has given such a rare treasure. It seems that this disciple position is only for him. Compared to the Son of Heaven, we are simply clouds and mud. How can we compete with him? It turns out that he is the strongest competitor. Even Zhu Fifan's expression changed abruptly. His eyes flashed with a touch of darkness, and his fists were secretly clenched. Damn it! Previously there was Ji Tianqing, and now there is Long Yunxiao. As the Son of Heaven, he is also coveting grandfather's inherited medical skills. This is big trouble. Grandfather may not be able to reject him. Zhu Fifan felt a great sense of crisis and was extremely anxious. Among the people in the main hall, only Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He did not have much of a reaction. Miracle Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi were stunned. Apparently, they did not expect that the Son of Heaven would also want to be Miracle Dr. Bailey's disciple. This was too sudden. Everyone's eyes gathered on Miracle Dr. Bailey to see how he would choose. Even Long Yunxiao was looking at him with an expectant look. In everyone's opinion, Miracle Dr. Bailey would most likely agree. After all, the Son of Heaven's status was extremely noble and his talent was extremely high. He would not tarnish the reputation of Miracle Dr. Bailey. Chapter 765. If it was anyone else, it would be hard for them to reject the Emperor. Everyone thought that Miracle Dr. Bailey would be humble and accept the Earth Core Crystal Core with a smile, accepting the Emperor's good intentions. However, Miracle Dr. Bailey revealed an apologetic look and said in a serious tone, "Emperor, if that's the case, then I can't accept this gift. You are the Emperor. Other than the Emperor and the Imperial Tutor, who else can be your master? Moreover, the Emperor and the Imperial Tutor are much more knowledgeable than me. Why should the Emperor give up what's close at hand and seek what's far away?" Hearing Divine Dr. Bailey's words, everyone revealed a stunned expression. Miracle Dr. Bailey actually rejected? How is that possible? If Miracle Dr. Bailey doesn't even like the Emperor, then who else is qualified to be his disciple? Long Yunxiao seemed to have expected Miracle Dr. Bailey to reject, so he wasn't surprised. However, a trace of disappointment flashed across his eyes. He secretly glanced at Ji Tianqing and sighed in his heart, sigh. Seems like Miracle Dr. Bailey has already chosen his disciple. Thinking of this, he maintained his smile and said to Miracle Dr. Bailey, "Since I'm not fated to be your disciple, let's not talk about this. However, please accept this gift." Miracle Dr. Bailey and Yun Zhongqi both understood that if they didn't accept the Emperor's gift, it would seem that the Emperor was stingy. Therefore, Yun Zhongqi opened his mouth to accept the gift on behalf of Miracle Dr. Bailey and thanked the Emperor again and again. The matter came to an end. Although it caused quite a commotion, it soon calmed down. Everyone's eyes were focused on Ji Tianqing, and they were filled with anticipation. Ji Tianqing stood up and bowed with a smile on his face. "Junior Ji Tianqing congratulates Miracle Dr. Bailey on your 300th birthday. May your fortune be as great as the East Sea and your longevity be as long as the stars. Junior has also prepared a small gift for you as a token of my sincerity." After that, Ji Tianqing took out 2 treasure boxes from his interspatial ring. Immediately, a maid came forward to receive the treasure box. She held the treasure box with both hands and walked to the front of the main seat, opening it in front of everyone. Ji Tianqing did not introduce anything because the things in the box were not worthy of a grand introduction. Everyone's gazes were gathered on the treasure box, staring at the item in the box. In the treasure box on the left, there were 3 jade green and translucent medicinal herbs. The medicinal herbs were protected by the array formation of the treasure box. Even now, they were still full of vitality, exuding rich green wood spirit qi. These were obviously 3 rare and precious herbs. Many of the experts present could not name these herbs. On the other hand, the treasure box on the right contained a few simple and aged artifacts. There were fragments of magic treasures, ancient books on the Tao of pills, and some other treasures that he couldn't name. These treasures all had a common characteristic, and that was that they were very ancient. They all had a history of over 1,000 years, and seemed to contain some secrets from before the ancient times. However, Ji Tianqing's experience was still shallow, so he couldn't figure out the mysteries of these things. The medicinal herbs and ancient artifacts that he gave were all carefully selected by him. They would definitely be useful to Divine Dr. Bailey. Moreover, he didn't have much family wealth to begin with. It was already not easy for him to take out these things. Those 6 medicinal herbs were the most precious medicinal herbs that he specially picked when he destroyed the Duanmu family's longevity garden. If other young talents gave these things, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, his status was special. Giving such a congratulatory gift instantly caused the atmosphere in the hall to become somewhat strange. The various experts looked at him with slightly strange gazes, and the young geniuses outside the hall even emitted bursts of discussion. It can't be. Ji Tianqing actually only gave a few medicinal herbs and a pile of junk? Heavens, it's really a small gift. Tisk, TSK, this gift that Ji Tianqing gave can't even compare to my congratulatory gift. How can he have the nerve to take out these things as congratulatory gifts? Is he looking down on Cloud Spirit Palace? Or is he looking down on Divine Dr. Bailey? Many young talents unscrupulously discussed, not concealing the contempt and ridicule in their tone. They had always hoped to become Divine Dr. Bailey's disciple and were extremely wary of Ji Tianqing, afraid that this quota would be snatched by Ji Tianqing. Now that Ji Tianqing had taken out an extremely ordinary gift, they took this opportunity to criticize and ridicule Ji Tianqing, making him lose the qualifications to compete for the position of Divine Doctor's disciple. Tianzi had already been rejected. If Ji Tianqing was also eliminated, the 2 strong competitors would be eliminated and their chances would be even greater. On this point, the dozens of young talents all understood. Hence, everyone added fuel to the fire and the discussion became louder and louder. Everyone in the hall heard it clearly and there was a subtle change in their gazes. Everyone had the intention of gloating, wanting to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself in front of everyone, or how to resolve the awkwardness. But Ji Tianqing's expression did not change. He was still calm and indifferent. Long Yun Shao, who was sitting beside him, secretly asked, "If you are short on money, I can lend you a treasure to help you resolve this matter." Long Yun Shao was also very clear that Ji Tianqing's reputation was very big, but he did not have a strong background, nor did he accumulate many resources and treasures. Ji Tianqing rejected and said, "Thank you for your kindness, Tianzi, but there is no need." The discussion outside the hall became noisier and noisier, and the atmosphere in the hall became more and more awkward. Divine Dr. Bailey hurriedly opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Tianqing, you have already given me a huge congratulatory gift previously, which made me very satisfied and happy. Why do you have to give me another gift tonight?" Hearing him say this, all the guests were stunned. Ji Tianqing has already given a congratulatory gift? When did this happen? Divine Dr. Bailey wouldn't be deliberately helping Ji Tianqing out of his predicament by saying this, right? Everyone was full of doubts and whispered to each other. Ji Tianqing also raised his eyebrows and felt a little warm in his heart. He thought that Divine Dr. Bailey deliberately said this to help him resolve the awkwardness. At this time, Divine Dr. Bailey opened his mouth and explained, "Everyone must be confused and think that I am helping Ji Tianqing out, right? In fact, there is something that you all might not know. Just half a month ago, this old man's precious granddaughter, Yunyao, was kidnapped by a demon clan powerhouse and planted with the incomparably vicious blood transformation curse. That is a curse that even I am unable to resolve. No one can save her, and Yao Yao's life is at stake." Hearing this, the guests inside and outside the hall were all shocked. No one would have thought that such a thing would happen to Yunyao. The savage and evil demon clan dared to lay their hands on the young miss of Cloud Spirit Palace. They were simply too despicable and vicious. However, when the princes of the imperial residence heard about this, their expressions changed immediately. They knew the outcome of this matter and immediately guessed Divine Dr. Bailey's intention. Divine Dr. Bailey's gaze swept across the hall and he continued in a serious tone, "At the critical moment when Yao Yao was about to lose her life, Ji Tianqing stepped forward bravely. With the help of the Divine Doctor of the imperial residence, he transferred the blood dissipation curse to himself. He used his life to bear the curse and resolved the danger to Yao Yao's life. Yao Yao is not only the apple of Cloud Spirit Palace's eye, but also my most beloved granddaughter. She is more precious than any treasure in this world. Ji Tianqing almost lost his life in order to save Yao Yao. Isn't this a great congratulatory gift to me? What else in this world is more precious than life? Divine Dr. Bailey's words were as loud as a bell and as powerful as thunder. His vigorous and powerful voice reverberated throughout the entire hall, lingering for a long time. Chapter 766. If someone else said these words, everyone might think that it was fake and that they were twisting words to help Ji Tianqing out of the predicament. However, Ji Tianqing did risk his life to save Yun Yao. Yun Yao was Divine Dr. Bailey's granddaughter. How noble was her status and how precious was her life. Divine Dr. Bailey was a doctor who had saved countless lives. Of course, he regarded life as the most precious thing. When he said these words, not only did they not have the slightest bit of falsehood, but they also highlighted his noble character and benevolence as a doctor. For a moment, everyone was in awe of Divine Dr. Bailey and Ji Tianqing. Because if it were anyone else, they would not be like Ji Tianqing and use their own life to save Yun Yao. Everyone thought about it carefully and was convinced by Divine Dr. Bailey's words. Ji Tianqing's gift was indeed a priceless treasure. Just as the hall was silent and everyone's mood was complicated, Long Yun Shao stood up and applauded excitedly. Good. Divine Dr. Bailey said it very well. Life is the most precious and priceless treasure. Divine Dr. Bailey's medical skills are miraculous and his medical ethics are noble. He can be said to be a miraculous doctor with a benevolent heart. He is a role model for all the doctors in the world. This monarch sincerely admires him. Ji Tianqing did not hesitate to save his own life. This monarch also witnessed this matter with his own eyes. This monarch really admires him. As Long Yun Zhao's voice fell, the guests inside and outside the hall also stood up and applauded, cheering for Divine Dr. Bailey and Ji Tianqing. The atmosphere in the hall instantly changed from awkward to hot-blooded, resonating and admiring. Those who were gloating and waiting to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself immediately withdrew their contempt and showed expressions of heartfelt admiration. In the square in front of the hall, those young talents who were criticizing and ridiculing Ji Tianqing all looked like they had been slapped in the face. Their cheeks turned red and they lowered their heads in shame. Compared to Ji Tianqing's act of sacrificing himself to save others, what they had done just now was truly despicable and disgusting. Even if Divine Dr. Bailey announced that he would accept Ji Tianqing as his disciple at this moment, they would have nothing to say, nor would they have any reason to refute. However, things weren't over yet. Divine Dr. Bailey extended his hand and took the treasure box from the maidservant's hand. He carefully observed the 3 stalks of medicinal herbs, the magic treasure, the alchemy book, and the ancient artifact fragment. Everyone looked at him quietly, not knowing what he was going to do. A moment later, Miracle Dr. Bailey suddenly discovered something. Immediately, his eyes surged with radiance as he revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. He held the treasure box with the 3 herbs in his hands and said excitedly, "Everyone, perhaps in your eyes, these are only 3 rare herbs. However, I want to tell you all that these 3 herbs are not only rare and precious, but they are also one of a kind. These 3 herbs were called the resurrection grass. No matter who dies, even if their 3 souls and 7 spirits are scattered, I can still use the resurrection grass to revive them. Moreover, the greatest effect of the resurrection grass is to condense the soul. Even if a soul refinement expert's soul is severely injured and on the verge of death, this medicine can be used to heal the injury and recover to its original state. To a soul refinement realm expert, using the resurrection grass to refine the resurrection pill is a miracle medicine to heal the soul injury. With this medicine in hand, a soul refinement realm expert is equivalent to having an extra life. Divine Dr. Bailey's imposing manner was like a rainbow, his voice was filled with excitement and surprise as it reverberated in the hall. Everyone was dumbfounded, dumbstruck. No one would have thought that the ordinary spiritual herbs that they looked down on and ridiculed with contempt were actually priceless treasures. A top-grade spiritual herb that could allow a soul refinement expert to have an extra life, this was absolutely a treasure that would make countless soul refinement experts go crazy for. Many experts in the hall were filled with shock and disbelief. The young talents in the square in front of the hall were even more shocked until they were dumbstruck like wooden chickens. When they regained their senses, their faces were flushed red with shame and their emotions were complicated to the extreme. They didn't dare to raise their heads to look at Ji Tianqing, much less the reaction of the people around them. They were so ashamed that they wished they could find a hole to burrow into. After all, their knowledge was shallow and they didn't recognize the rare resurrection grass. They even opened their mouths to mock Ji Tianqing earlier. How ironic and shameful was this? Although everyone didn't understand how Ji Tianqing could have such a precious spiritual herb, but some experts who knew the inside story immediately guessed that these 3 stalks of resurrection grass were most likely related to the Duanmu family's herb garden. Divine Dr. Bailey was the clearest that these 3 stalks of resurrection grass were definitely snatched from the longevity garden. Because he had traversed the entire profound sky continent and spent dozens of years, but he still couldn't find a spiritual herb like the resurrection grass. Rumor had it that only the Duanmu family had obtained the resurrection grass 200 years ago and nurtured it as the treasure of the longevity garden. Just as everyone's emotions were surging and they were exclaiming inexplicably, Divine Dr. Bailey held up the treasure box that contained all kinds of antique fragments and said excitedly, other than the 3 stalks of resurrection grass, these seemingly insignificant antique fragments are also extremely rare treasures. As everyone knows, the mysterious and vast southern wilderness swamp is as mysterious as the eastern sea's bottomless ruins. Within these 2 forbidden areas, there are ancient ruins buried. There are even primordial Soul Supreme's cave residences. Previously, when I was traveling outside, I was exploring the southern wilderness swamp to search for spiritual herbs and ancient ruins. If I'm not wrong, there are a few Dharma treasures and ancient weapon fragments that came from the southern wilderness swamp's 7 Slaughter ancient palace. Hearing Divine Dr. Bailey's words, everyone opened their eyes wide again and revealed a shocked expression. Many experts who had heard of the 7 Slaughter ancient palace couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. In the Middle State, there were many legends from the ancient era. It was said that it was a magnificent era where geniuses came forth in large numbers and experts were as numerous as trees in the forest. At that time, martial arts prospered in the Tian Xian land and the number of primordial Soul Supremes was 10 times more than now. In the historical records, the 7 Slaughter Supremes was a Supreme's elite warrior with boundless power. The 7 Slaughter ancient palace was the cave residence of the 7 Slaughter Supremes. According to the legends, after he had mastered the 7 Slaughter Supremes and surpassed the primordial Soul Supremes, he left the Tian Xian land. It was unknown how many rare treasures were hidden in his 7 Slaughter ancient palace. It might even contain his martial arts succession. For thousands of years, countless elite warriors rushed to the southern wilderness swamp dauntlessly. They risked their lives to search for the 7 Slaughter ancient palace and explore the secrets and treasures inside. However, the 7 Slaughter ancient palace was protected by the primordial soul formation and many mysterious and profound defenses. Up until now, no one had solved the secrets of the 7 Slaughter ancient palace and truly explored the depths of the ancient palace. Those seemingly ancient fragments were actually from the 7 Slaughter ancient palace. This was an extremely important clue, a rare treasure. Chapter 767. Those seemingly worthless ancient fragments were actually related to the 7 Kill Supreme's cave abode and martial arts legacy. This was definitely an immeasurably rare treasure. The value of those ancient fragments was even more precious than the resurrection grass. Today, when the news spread, the resurrection grass and the 7 kills ancient palaces fragments would definitely cause a sensation in the central region. If these 2 treasures were in the hands of the Cloud Spirit Palace, it would be fine. The various forces were afraid of the Cloud Spirit Palace's strength and might not dare to act rashly. If an ordinary wealthy family or force obtained these 2 treasures, it would definitely bring about a fatal disaster. They would be besieged and robbed by countless forces and powerhouses. Thinking of this, many powerhouses' hearts were filled with shock and excitement. Ji Tianqing's gift was too precious. It was even more precious than the earth core crystal core that Long Yunxiao had offered. However, everyone was blind and did not recognize the value of the treasure. They wanted to see Ji Tianqing make a fool of himself and mocked him proudly. This shocking fact gave everyone a resounding slap in the face. They were so ashamed that they wanted to crawl into a hole to hide their faces. Inside and outside the hall, countless guests were silent. Their expressions were ugly and their hearts were filled with shame and awkwardness. When they looked at Ji Tianqing again, they felt that he was even more unfathomable, mysterious, and valiant. He could actually give away such rare and precious treasures. Just how rich and powerful were his assets and treasures? When everyone was mocking and criticizing him, his expression did not change and he was indifferent. How magnanimous was that? Or perhaps, when everyone was mocking and criticizing him, his heart was filled with contempt and he did not even bother to open his mouth to explain? Thinking of this, countless guests felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. They were even more ashamed and wanted to die. Especially those guests who were the loudest and gloating. They were too ashamed to stay any longer and left the banquet dejectedly. However, no one knew that Ji Tianqing's mood at this moment was actually a little confused. He looked at the 3 resurrection grasses and the pile of ancient fragments and muttered to himself, "Did old Master Bailey deliberately make up a lie to scare people? Is this gift really so precious?" In fact, when he destroyed the longevity garden, he saw that the 3 stalks of resurrection grass were the most well-protected and had the most mysterious and powerful auras, so he picked them in passing. He had obtained those ancient, broken fragments by accident when he was looting the spoils of war in recent months. He didn't care about these things at all. He only knew that these fragments were very ancient and mysterious. Perhaps they were related to some secret, so he gave them to Divine Dr. Bailey. He thought that with Miracle Dr. Bailey's experience and knowledge, he might be able to unravel the secret of the ancient fragment. However, he had never imagined that the outcome would be so shocking. If he had known that the resurrection grass and the ancient fragment were so precious, perhaps he wouldn't have. As he thought of this, another thought popped into his mind. If I didn't give these things to him, how would he know the value of these things and the secrets involved? Speaking of which, I should thank Old Man Bailey. If he hadn't told me the truth just now, I might have thrown those fragments away as trash when I cleaned up my spatial ring in the future. At this moment, everyone in the hall came back to their senses. They looked at Miracle Dr. Bailey with burning eyes and a thick sense of envy. Miracle Dr. Bailey closed the 2 treasure boxes and said solemnly, "Tianqing, you have already given me a priceless treasure. I can't accept this gift anymore. Please take it back." Ji Tianqing was stunned for a moment. He smiled and shook his head. "Miracle Dr. Bailey, this is a token of my appreciation for you. How can I take it back after giving it away? As the saying goes, rouge is given to a beauty, a treasure sword is given to a hero. Only you can cultivate the resurrection grass and only you can refine it into an elixir. As for the ancient fragments of the 7 murders ancient palace, only you are knowledgeable enough to study them thoroughly and unravel the secret within. In my hands, these 2 treasures are like pearls covered in dust. It's a waste of God's gifts." Although Miracle Dr. Bailey understood this, he refused to accept the gift and was about to reject it again. At this moment, Yun Zhongqi's expression changed. He quickly sent a message to Miracle Dr. Bailey and said, "Father-in-law, you have already accepted the Emperor's gift. How can you be biased and reject Tianqing's gift? Anyway, you can accept the treasure tonight and return it to Tianqing in the future." Hearing this, Miracle Dr. Bailey nodded his head and said, "That makes sense." Therefore, he didn't reject the gift anymore. He smiled and said, "Tianqing, since this gift is a token of your appreciation, it would be impolite of me to refuse it. Moreover, everyone knows that this time when I return to Zhong province, I will use this birthday banquet as an opportunity to choose an upright and talented disciple to impart my medical skills to. Tianqing, I will take this gift as a gift for you to become my disciple." Miracle Dr. Bailey's voice reverberated throughout the hall. Countless guests in the square in front of the hall could hear him clearly. Although everyone had expected this, when they heard these words, their expressions still changed drastically, revealing incomparably complicated expressions. Miracle Dr. Bailey really wanted to accept Ji Tianqing as his disciple and impart his medical skills to him. From today onwards, Ji Tianqing would have many dazzling halos, including the identity of being Miracle Dr. Bailey's personal disciple. His status would become even more honorable and he would have a peerless miracle doctor as his backer. How enviable of an honor was this! The various experts in the hall all revealed astonished expressions. The young talents in the square in front of the hall were extremely envious of Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing was so perfect. Not only was he the #1 genius of the human race, but he had also given Miracle Dr. Bailey 2 sets of rare treasures. What reason did Miracle Dr. Bailey have to not choose him as his disciple? None. If it were anyone else, as long as they had a normal brain and IQ, they would definitely choose Ji Tianqing. Countless guests inside and outside the hall suddenly burst into heated discussions. Countless people exclaimed and envied. Zhu Fifan's face became extremely ugly. He clenched his fists so tightly that he didn't even realize that his fingernails were digging into his flesh and bleeding. Even Long Yun Shao glanced sideways at Ji Tianqing as a bitter smile appeared on his face. Miracle Dr. Bailey really chose him early. This guy is really lucky. Everyone was shocked and their eyes were red with envy and jealousy. Only Ji Tianqing was still in a daze. He muttered in his heart, "Why did the old man suddenly announce that he wants to accept me as his disciple? I have never expressed this idea. I almost destroyed his ancient green maple tree before. Doesn't he bear a grudge at all?" At this time, Miracle Dr. Bailey saw that he was silent, so he asked with a smile, "Tianqing, don't you want to be my disciple? Don't you want to learn medical skills from me?" Only then did the guests notice Ji Tianqing's reaction. Immediately, they burst into an uproar, and another round of heated discussion broke out. It was to the extent that many young geniuses even let out sorrowful roars. God! What's Ji Tianqing's expression? Doesn't he want to be his disciple? This guy is too abominable. We dream of being the disciple of Miracle Dr. Bailey. How dare he refuse? God doesn't open his eyes. The supreme glory that we yearn for even in our dreams has descended upon him, and he dares to despise it? God has eyes. Quickly send down the heavenly thunder to kill Ji Tianqing. He doesn't want to be his disciple, but I do. If I have to be the disciple of Miracle Dr. Bailey, I will kneel down and kowtow 10,000 times. Inside and outside the hall, there was a lot of noise and excitement. If Ji Tianqing dared to refuse Miracle Dr. Bailey, those young talents who were crazy with jealousy would rush into the hall and beat him up violently on the ground. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.